fall in love with the nanny aunt who is 20 years older than me. Bang. It sounded like a gunshot. Kinji had a dream in which she saw her son being shot dead right before her eyes. Her son had grown up, his face full of hatred. She wanted to rush to him, but she couldn't move. In the end, her son fell into the sea, and fish and shrimp devoured him. The blood-red scene filled her vision. She wanted to scream, to cry, but suddenly the scene changed. She found herself in the arms of a man who was tall and held her tightly. She couldn't tell who he was. In the next moment, the man lowered his head and kissed her fiercely, rubbing her and saying that she belonged to him, only to him, and no one else. He seemed to want to absorb her into his very bones, gentle yet somewhat beautiful. He kept kissing her, and then she suddenly woke up. When she came to, much of it was a blur, but the suffocating sadness lingered, along with other feelings. After a while, she felt a little better. A few days ago, after hearing advice from a familiar woman, Lin Ma, she nervously came to the second young master's apartment, the place he usually lived. She would be staying there from now on. She knew the second young master was returning soon. Otherwise, the madam wouldn't have selected her to come here. The madam chose her because she was honest, could cook, and kept things clean. She believed that Kinji could stay here and also observe who the second young master was associating with. When daylight broke, she got up and checked the house that had been cleaned. The man her family had arranged for her to meet asked to see her. He wanted to clarify things. She didn't want things to stay this way, she needed to clarify it with him. She went out, and when she met him, the man was with another woman. The two were hugging, kissing each other. You want to get married, but you won't let me touch you. What kind of marriage is that? Your ex must have dumped you for the same reason, right? Listening to the words of the honest middle-aged man, Kinji was furious. She simply didn't want to sleep with him so quickly. If her family hadn't introduced him to her, she wouldn't have even agreed to meet him. Looking at him hugging the woman, whose heavy makeup made it clear she was no proper lady, Kinji thought, this isn't how decent people behave. When she was young, her beauty had led her to be deceived into having a child she had painstakingly raised. Now that her son was in middle school, Kinji didn't have much education and had always worked in housework. Being able to enter the Fu family was a stroke of luck. The Fu family treated her well, and she did her job well. She had been assigned to the second young master's apartment. Her family had advised her to find someone to marry, someone who would take care of her as she grew older. They also suggested she return to her hometown, but she didn't want to get married again. She had come here today to tell this man she was breaking up with him. She wanted to focus on taking care of the second young master. She never considered marriage. She didn't want anyone to become her son's stepfather. She said it outright. You want to break up? You actually want to break up with me? Kinji, do you think you're someone special? Who else would be with you besides me? The middle-aged man looked down on her. Look at you, with that loose clothing. You still look okay, but you're not young anymore. Who would want you? I didn't ask you to want me. What makes you think you're so young? Aren't you just as unattractive? Kinji said, turning on her heels and walking away, grabbing her cloth bag. The loose dark-colored sportswear made her body look shapeless. She wasn't very tall, just over 1.6 meters. Her face, though nice when looked at closely, still betrayed her age. She went back home. She faintly heard the man's angry voice from behind, a woman like you has no charm. What man would want you? You still want to find a man with a son in tow. The woman's voice joined in, exactly. Kinji pretended not to hear, called a taxi, and got in. Although she could drive, she hadn't used her car. After a few steps, she hailed a cab. When she checked her phone, it was a message saying the young master was coming back. She looked at it, but before she could process it, the car suddenly stopped. She didn't manage to sit properly and bumped forward. In that instant, she didn't know why, but she grabbed the seat tightly. After a while, she came back to her senses. The driver asked her if she was okay, and she touched her forehead. Fortunately, she was fine, just a little dizzy, and a few extra thoughts seemed to have entered her mind. It felt like they were visions of the future and also fragments of the dream. This world was actually a novel, and the novel's name was The CEO's White Moonlight. Her son was a supporting character, an antagonist who always opposed the male lead. Because of her death, she would soon die, and then her son would start hating the male lead. The male lead was the second young master. Later, her son would keep opposing the second young master. Even though he succeeded for a time, his end would be tragic. Thinking of the scenes in her mind, Kinji's heart ached. Why did it have to be like this? If only her son didn't oppose the second young master, this wouldn't happen. The second young master was a member of the Fu family. Her son could never defeat him, not to mention that he was the male lead. Kinji had read the novel, and it mostly focused on the second young master's story, his love with the female lead, their bittersweet first love, and the relationship with his ex-girlfriend. Many people liked the second young master. She came back to her senses and thought of her son, who was always obedient, had good grades, and looked well behaved. He was sensible since he was young, although perhaps now, entering puberty, he was a little rebellious. But he was still obedient. What mattered most to her was her son. She had raised him with so much difficulty, and he must be well taken care of. She would never let him turn out like that. The second young master's apartment was in the best area of the city. The Fu family was the richest family in S city, though only a certain circle knew about it. It was an old money family, which Kinji had heard from her son. He learned about it online. Soon, she arrived, paid the fare, greeted the security guard, and returned to the apartment she worked at. She took the elevator up. The domestic staff had their own elevator, which was separate from the residence. She worked as the second young master's housekeeper and cook, also known as Kinma. She had been lucky to know someone, and after performing well, she got hired by the Fu family. Everything about the Fu family was confidential. The second young master had been abroad and hadn't returned. Now, she was the only one here. The butler didn't live here. She saw that there was nothing for her to clean since it had already been tidied. She returned to her room. There weren't many people here. She didn't know when the second young master would arrive. The day was getting late, and she lay on her bed, waiting. She decided to visit her son in a few days. Her son was about to enter high school. Thinking of that, she fell asleep. The next day, she woke up and decided to live her life well. If not, she would talk to her son. At midnight, she vaguely heard music and voices. She hurriedly got up, put on her dark sportswear, and looked at her aging face in the mirror. She wasn't noticeable. She went outside, but there was nothing to see. The door was closed, and she thought of calling, but it was the middle of the night. She returned to her room. On the third day, she woke up and had a simple breakfast that she made herself. After eating, she cleaned up. She heard a noise at the door, walked to it, and saw a woman standing outside. The woman was dressed in red, with loose, curly hair, fashionable and exquisite makeup, bright red lips, and a good figure. She looked like a rich and beautiful woman. The woman looked at Kinji disdainfully, one hand holding sunglasses and the other carrying an expensive bag. Who are you? Are you the housekeeper of the Fu family? The woman looked inside, as if she wanted to enter. Kinji didn't answer her but directly asked, Who are you? Who am I? Can't you tell? I'm here to see the second young master, the woman said, raising an eyebrow and sizing her up. Is the second young master here? She tried to walk inside. Yes, not here. The second young master hasn't returned yet, Kinji hurriedly said. Not yet. The woman checked her bag and looked around. Miss, he hasn't returned yet, Kinji repeated. The woman sneered, didn't say another word, and walked away with her high heels clicking on the floor, flipping her curls behind her. Kinji didn't have time to say anything and closed the door. She continued cleaning, and the next day, she decided to visit her son. She packed some things and realized it was getting late. She started cooking dinner. After finishing, she heard a knock at the door. She quickly went to answer. When she opened the door, she saw a tall figure, a young man in a suit, casually speaking. She heard his deep, calm voice, very warm. Chapter 2, A Fragrance of Woman. Has the second young master returned? Young master, she was about to ask. I'm back. I've returned to the country and came to the apartment. I went somewhere today, he replied. You don't need to come to find me. I'll look for you when I'm free. What is going on? What do they think? Just because they know I'm back, they want to come find me. I'm not in the mood right now. There are too many beautiful women around. All right, I want to leave this time. His voice trailed off as he turned around to glance at her. His gaze was subtle, as though he was scanning her, and then he asked, Who are you? His voice was clear and magnetic. Kinji had seen photos of the second young master before and thought he was handsome. Now, in person, he was even more striking. She immediately said, "Second young master, you've returned. I'm Kin Ma. If you need anything, just call me. I take care of the apartment here and also do the cleaning." Kin Ma, the second young master, Fu Zheng, looked at her. His handsome face was both elegant and cold, yet warm and approachable. "Kin Ma, are you sent by the family?" "Yes, young master," Qinji replied seriously, recalling that the second young master's name was Fu Zheng. After all, she was here to take care of him. "Good, then I'll trouble you from now on, Kin Ma," Fu Zheng said. "Young master, is there anything you need?" Qinji asked politely. "All right, I got it." "Kin Ma, please get me a glass of water," Fu Zheng smiled briefly. "You look very young, Kin Ma." "Second young master is joking," she replied, thinking to herself that her son was already in high school and she was much older than Fu Zheng. She understood he was just teasing. "Please bring me the water." "Yes, second young master." Qinji quickly turned and went to fetch the water. When she returned, Fu Zheng was on the phone. He didn't seem pleased as he put down the phone and turned to her again, his tone once again soft. "Kin Ma. Here is the water, second young master." Qinji handed the cup to him. Fu Zheng thanked her, his long, slender fingers with clearly defined joints gracefully taking the cup. The cup was already prepared in the apartment, and she had heard that it was one of Fu Zheng's favorites, bone china, a set he particularly liked, and only used this set. "Earlier, I heard a noise. Someone came looking for you, second young master," Qinji remarked. After hearing that, Fu Zheng asked her gently when the woman had come and who she was. Qinji explained when it happened and who the woman was. Fu Zheng thought for a moment and said it was likely business, and the person left without much to say. Qinji understood. Fu Zheng didn't seem to care much about the visit. He grabbed his phone and went out, apparently calling the family to ask why they had sent someone to look after him. He then entered his room and closed the door. Qinji watched from the side and retreated. She wasn't nervous anymore. Glancing at the time, she resumed preparing dinner, making the dishes that second young master liked. She added some ribs, sweet and sour, along with some lighter dishes, hoping to make a good meal. Seeing it was getting late, she decided to ask Fu Zheng if he would be dining in. She walked toward his door and knocked. "Second young master, dinner is ready." Fu Zheng heard the knock and thought it was something urgent. When he realized it was about dinner, he hadn't eaten yet. He was hungry. After taking a shower earlier, he was still a bit damp. He glanced at his attire, tied his robe, and quickly grabbed a towel to dry his hair. After a few swipes, he opened the door. "Second young master," Qinji looked up and didn't meet his eyes again. She simply said, "I've prepared the dishes you like." "All right, I'll be right there." "Thank you, Kin Ma," Fu Zheng nodded, glancing at her without lingering. Qinji responded and reassured him not to rush, heading downstairs to the dining area. Fu Zheng, after drying his hair and changing into a shirt, went to the walk-in closet to find his clothes, taking care to ensure everything was in place. He entered the dining room and sat down to eat. "Kin Ma, the food is really good," Fu Zheng complimented after taking a bite. "It's been a long time since I had food this good." Qinji, who was assigned to the apartment because of her cooking, smiled quietly. Fu Zheng asked her again to join him, since they were the only two there. But Qinji declined. Fu Zheng continued eating. His eating habits were refined and elegant, and every movement he made was graceful. Qinji had never seen anyone eat so elegantly. After he finished, he thanked her and told her to go ahead since she hadn't eaten yet. He then stood up and went upstairs. Qinji went back to the kitchen, eating a quick meal on her own, then washed the dishes. The young master didn't come back down. Not long later, Fu Zheng came downstairs again, dressed more elegantly, and Qinji heard the sound of his footsteps. She came out and saw him standing at the door. "Kin Ma, I'm going out for a bit," Fu Zheng said casually. "Of course, young master," she replied. He left, and just as he reached the door, the housekeeper arrived, informing him that the car was ready. Qinji lowered her head slightly. She heard Fu Zheng confirm, and the sound of his footsteps grew faint as he left. She didn't watch him any longer. The door closed behind her and she walked back into the kitchen. Soon, she tied it up and then went to her room to rest. Time passed without her noticing. Around 10 p.m., she heard a sound from outside the door, as if someone had rung the doorbell. She stood up and went out, opening the door to see Fu Zheng standing there. "Young master, you're back?" she asked. Fu Zheng stood there, wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking a little disheveled and slightly tipsy. His jacket was draped over his wrist and there was a faint smell of alcohol mixed with something else, perhaps from him. Had he been drinking? She instinctively reached out to support him. Fu Zheng, who had been drinking more than planned, was indeed a little drunk. He had not meant to drink, but ended up doing so. He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. When he saw Kinji, he straightened his posture. He could faintly smell a delicate fragrance, something faint yet alluring. He couldn't figure out where it was coming from, but it seemed to be from Kinji. He was surprised. How could she smell like this? He had always liked women with a more distinct fragrance. Chapter 3, he savoring the moment. In the past, he thought he had encountered the most delightful fragrance from a woman, but now he realized it wasn't so. The fragrance from earlier, that was the one he truly liked. He sat on the sofa in the living room, everything here was just as he wanted. He relaxed. Kinji immediately went to pour water and brought it to the young master. Fu Zheng lowered his head, his long, strong fingers with distinct joints rubbed his eyes. He saw the water and took the glass in his hand, his fingers wrapping around it unconsciously, giving it a slight shake before lifting it to his lips. He took a small sip and the water seemed to carry the faint fragrance. But as soon as he took another sniff, it was gone. He tilted his head back and drank a large gulp of water. Feeling a little better, he looked at the coffee table, preparing to set the glass down. He pressed his fingers against his temples. "Young master," Kinji called, noticing he might need her to take the glass. Fu Zheng glanced at her. He couldn't shake the thought that Kinji carried that scent, the one he found so mesmerizing, the fragrance of a woman. But could someone like Kinji be considered a woman in that sense? Her age, her appearance, she wasn't particularly striking, and her age was apparent. Kinji set the water cup down where it belonged. Fu Zheng stared at her for a moment. He couldn't figure out how Kinji, of all people, could emit that captivating fragrance. He stood up. Kinji stepped forward, offering to support him. "Young master, are you going upstairs to rest?" Fu Zheng made a slight gesture, as if to push her away, but then he paused, not doing so. He let her help him and nodded. "Thank you, Kinma." Again, he caught the scent, his favorite fragrance of a woman coming from Kinji. It was faint, but it was there, and only when she was close enough. He hadn't consciously tried to sniff her, but it was undeniable. He hadn't intended to have Kinji assist him further. "Be careful, young master," Kinji warned as she helped him. Fu Zheng smelled the mix of coldness, softness, and alcohol on his own body, but the delicate fragrance from Kinji seemed to become stronger the closer she was. They reached the spiral staircase and Kinji, holding him, urged him to be careful. Fu Zheng looked at the woman helping him. Kinji. Was it that his attention was distracted? He stumbled slightly but quickly regained his balance. To prevent him from falling, Kinji ended up tipping into his arms. She hadn't stood steady. Fu Zheng, towering above her, watched as she nearly fell into his embrace. Was it intentional? He didn't move, his expression a mixture of amusement. But he didn't act, not wanting to push her away. He stood still as she steadied herself and called out to him. Seeing her condition, Fu Zheng lightly pushed her away, signaling that he could manage the rest. "I'll go up by myself," he said. Kinji called after him. Fu Zheng shook his head, saying it was unnecessary. He straightened and walked up the stairs, disappearing into his room. He stood there for a moment, lost in thought, before lowering his head and leaving. Kinji glanced up but said nothing, returning to her duties. She rested afterward. In the morning, she made breakfast, waiting for the young master. Fu Zheng woke up and entered the walk-in closet, where he half-dressed in a white shirt and dark suit pants, his bare upper body looking like a finely chiseled sculpture. After considering his options, he changed into a more casual British-style outfit, appearing relaxed but still with an air of nobility and elegance. He adjusted his glasses and walked downstairs. His hands slipped into his pockets as he walked, elegant and composed, with a slight touch of laziness and gentleness. When he entered the kitchen, he remembered there was someone else. Kinji. He paused, watching her from behind, unable to see her figure clearly. "Young master, you're up." Kinji heard his footsteps and turned around. Fu Zheng simply said that he was going out and didn't intend to stay for breakfast. Kinji ate alone. After finishing her meal, she checked the time and packed some things for her son, including the dishes she had prepared. She figured she could bring some food to her son since she wasn't sure what he would be eating at school. She tied it up and changed into a simple yet decent casual dress, carrying a bag and thermal food container before heading to her son's school. Her son's school was in the city, not the best middle school, but still quite good. When she arrived at the gate, she informed the guard and decided to wait. She hoped to catch her son after school. Although it was the time classes should be over, her son hadn't yet come out. She thought about calling him but hesitated. She waited a little longer. Finally, her son came running out, calling out to her, "Mom, why are you here?" She handed him the food she brought. Her son had gotten a little thinner and darker, but still looked handsome. He took the food, his face showing a bit of childishness as he marveled at how much she had brought. "How is school going?" Kinji asked, her concern showing. "It's fine," her son replied. "That is good. Are you having an exam soon?" she continued, noticing his pale face. Was he unwell? She reached out to touch his forehead, but he quickly shook his head, refusing her touch. She stared at him, surprised. How was it that her son seemed to be playing the role of the male antagonist in the book? It was hard to believe. Everything in her life had started to feel like a story, and she was afraid of revealing her emotions, having waited so long. "No exams, Mom," her son said, shaking his head and firmly refusing to let her touch his forehead. She nodded but still handed him 500 yuan, asking if it was enough. The month's allowance was almost due. Her son refused to accept it at first, but Kinji insisted, reminding him to buy whatever he needed, even if it was a branded item. He smiled and said, "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry about me. I'll visit you during the break." "All right," Kinji said, happy that he was growing up. He was no longer the little boy who used to cling to her. She still hugged him in her heart, but she let him go, watching him walk into the school until she couldn't see him anymore. Only then did she turn to thank the gatekeeper. "You often visit your son. He must be doing well in his studies," the gatekeeper asked. "Yes, he is doing well," Kinji replied. The gatekeeper nodded. "I thought I'd seen you before." She didn't respond but waved goodbye before heading back to the apartment. When she returned, Zheng was still not home. She didn't know where he had gone. She made a small meal for herself, but it wasn't much, and she didn't feel like asking anyone. She rested for the night. She had a nightmare, one that took her back to the past. Elsewhere, in the largest club in S City, 3 men sat in a quiet private room, drinking and talking. They were all good-looking, each with his own unique charm. One had almond-shaped eyes, a mischievous smile, and a youthful look, dressed in a floral shirt. Another was more taciturn, with a cold and tough demeanor. The third was refined and gentle, smiling warmly. There were also some women with them, all looking quite good, some heavily made up, while others wore light makeup. Chapter 4, His Gaze. The woman beside the man was wearing light makeup and was the most beautiful of them all, engaged in conversation. Sitting in the center, with a hint of wildness and grace, the man, Zheng, had taken off his outer suit and rolled up his patterned shirt sleeves. He seemed lost in thought, distracted mainly by the fragrance of kinma. He kept thinking about it, particularly because the scent of the woman next to him was not to his liking. "Second young Master Fu, what are you thinking?" someone asked. Zheng looked over and met the eyes of Xiao Yu, who had a flirtatious smile in his almond-shaped eyes. Xiao Yu winked at him. Zheng shook his head slightly, saying, "Nothing." Xiao Yu didn't believe him. He turned to the other side and asked, "What do you think, Brother Ju?" Jukin was quiet, serious, and stern. He turned to look at Zheng and Xiao Yu, and simply said, "I don't know." "Still thinking about it?" Zheng asked, referring to the woman or maybe family matters. "Not at all," Jukin replied curtly. Xiao Yu raised an eyebrow and chuckled, teasing with a click of his tongue. No one responded to him. Zheng was about to speak again, telling them to relax, but before he could finish, the door suddenly opened and someone walked in. Zheng glanced over and quickly looked away without focusing. Xiao Yu noticed and remarked, "Who's here?" Jukin also turned to look, then turned back to Zheng. "Zheng, she's here." Zheng furrowed his brow. He wasn't sure why she came. The woman walked toward him, called his name softly, and flipped her hair, looking dazzling. "Second young Master Fu." Zheng's long, well-defined fingers took his wine glass and gave it a gentle swirl, admiring it under the dim lights, then he smiled softly. "I'm here, second young Master Fu." The woman spoke again, "I came to your apartment to find you earlier." "You were looking for me?" Zheng thought to himself, he was about to say that they had broken up, and she didn't need to search for him anymore. The woman's expression changed, and she moved forward to throw herself into Zheng's arms, but another woman stopped her. Zheng didn't want to play games. He was lost in thought, distracted by other matters. He stood up and left. The next day, Kinji woke up, just like any other day. She didn't remember much of the nightmare from last night. It had been a long time ago. She dreamed about the time she gave birth to her son, Kinzie. He took her last name. Back then, she was all alone. No one was by her side, and she almost died from complications. The memory of that difficult labor haunted her, but she didn't want to dwell on it. She then thought about her son, Kinzie. Was he really all right? She sent a message to one of his best friends to check on him. There was no immediate response, but later, the friend texted back saying everything was fine. The friend, a chubby boy from a well-off family, had always been close to her son. He had met her before. Around noon, she heard someone return home. It was Fu Zheng. She went to open the door. No need to open the door, Fu Zheng said, looking at Kinzie. He was wearing a new white shirt, clearly just changed, and smiled slightly as he entered. Kinzie watched as Fu Zheng walked past her and went upstairs to rest in his room. She went back to her tasks, cleaning and preparing lunch. When everything was almost done, her phone rang. It was Madame Fu. Kinzie rarely used her phone for anything other than work. She picked it up nervously. Madam, she greeted, lowering her head slightly. Madame Fu was a serious person, though she would occasionally smile. She was kind to Kinzie, and Kinzie was very grateful for her. Kin Ma, has second young master returned? How is he? Madame Fu asked. Very well, Kinzie answered seriously, providing a brief update about Fu Zheng's return. That's good. Take good care of him. He can be difficult at times. If anything happens, let me know, Madame Fu advised. I will, Kinzie responded, still a bit nervous. Madame Fu asked a few more questions, expressing concern for her. After the call ended, Kinzie sat down with the phone in her hands. It was a gift from Madame Fu. It was a very expensive phone, and her son had even commented on how good it was. He wanted one for himself but couldn't afford it yet. She sometimes wished she could give it to him, but it was too expensive for her. She earned a decent salary at the Fu family with a monthly income of over 10,000 yuan, along with other benefits. She rarely got bored enough to check the phone, though. She was older, not like the younger people around her or Fu Zheng. After putting the phone down, she continued cooking, preparing Fu Zheng's favorite dishes. When the meal was ready, she went upstairs to call him. She walked lightly up to his room. The house had 3 rooms, each with a purpose. The outermost room belonged to Fu Zheng. She knocked lightly on the door. Fu Zheng had just taken a shower and, after looking at his toned body in the mirror, slipped into a bathrobe and came out, his hair still damp. He hadn't bothered to dry it, the weather wasn't too cold. When he heard her knock, he tied his bathrobe and walked to the door, adjusting his hair. What's the matter, Kin Ma? He asked as he opened the door. Kinzie, noticing that Fu Zheng had not buttoned his shirt yet, immediately informed him that the meal was ready. Fu Zheng smiled softly and nodded. I'll be down shortly, Fu Zheng said. Kinzie nodded and went downstairs, waiting for him. Not long after, Fu Zheng came down, wearing a white shirt and looking effortlessly elegant. He walked down the stairs gracefully, every step exuding a calm and refined demeanor. Kinzie looked at him. Fu Zheng glanced at the dishes she had prepared and smiled. Kin Ma, you really know me well. These are all your favorites, second young master, Kinzie said with a smile. Fu Zheng smiled warmly in return, his gaze soft yet appreciative. He also took a moment to notice her figure. She was, in fact, quite well proportioned, even though her loose, unassuming clothes might suggest otherwise. He couldn't help but notice how striking she could look if she were dressed differently. Her waist wasn't thick, and her face, though not young, had a certain charm when observed for long enough. He could see the traces of a graceful youth in her features, even though she was no longer young. He paused for a moment before asking, Kin Ma, would you like to join me for the meal? He smiled again, warm and gentle, his demeanor courteous and elegant. Chapter 5, he told her not to move. Kinzie asked, do you need help, young master? Fu Zheng gently asked, how can I help, Kin Ma? His eyes were fixed on her. Kinzie replied, perhaps you can help with serving the dishes or peeling seafood. Kin Ma, don't bother, Fu Zheng said, but still, he wanted Kinzie to help, so she continued assisting him from the side. Fu Zheng didn't look at her too much as he ate, but he praised Kinzie's cooking. The dishes you made are delicious, Kin Ma. They are better than anything I've had before. He glanced at her as he spoke. Kinzie responded modestly, it's nothing. Fu Zheng smiled, don't be so humble. When Kinzie got closer to him, he once again caught the scent of the fragrance he liked, the one he preferred. He didn't like other scents, but this one he liked it. He shook his head. What if it was someone else? He wondered, but didn't he say it aloud. Qinji didn't he know what Fu Zheng was thinking. When the meal was nearly finished, she asked if he wanted some pig estrotters. She knew he liked them, as he was very grounded in his tastes. Fu Zheng agreed, then watched her eat. After finishing his meal, Fu Zheng went back upstairs. Qinji carefully cleaned up the table and washed the dishes in the kitchen. Once everything was cleaned up, she sat down and had her own meal. She saved some rice and vegetables for herself, though it wasn't tea as good as the dishes she made for Fu Zheng. It was more of her preferred spicy flavor. She loved spicy food because of where she had lived before, but she could cook all kinds of dishes. Her skin had always been good, and even when she was young, she had never had any skin issues. After eating 2 bowls of rice and feeling full, she cleaned up and tidied the room before heading back to her own. Meanwhile, Fu Zheng was looking at his phone, his expression cold, his gaze intense. He flipped through a few photos, each one the same, still as beautiful as before. He traced the screen with his long, slender fingers, his hands carefully caressing the surface. After a while, he stopped. He didn't want to zoom in further. The sight was frustrating. How long had it been since she disappeared? When would she return? Was she ever coming back? That kind of beauty was what he liked, the gentle, delicate type. There weren't many women he liked, but he preferred them to be well-behaved and refined. He also cared about their scent, especially their natural fragrance, not any other kind. He closed his eyes. As evening approached, someone came looking for him. Fu Zheng got up and walked out, heading downstairs. He glanced around but didn't see anyone. Where had they gone? He walked down to the kitchen. He heard the sound of Qinji still busy preparing food, dishes that Fu Zheng liked and that she also liked. When she was done, she turned around and saw him standing there. "You're up, young master." "Dinner is ready," she said, her tone earnest. "Is it ready?" Fu Zheng had been planning to leave, but he stopped and leaned against the doorframe, rolling up his sleeves lazily, his gaze not leaving her. He couldn't help but observe her more closely, wondering about her scent again. Was it really the same as before? But why was he thinking like this? She was an older woman, and here he was, thinking about something like that. Had it been too long since he had been with a woman? He had just eaten, and the woman had just cooked. Where was the allure in that? He shook his head, trying to focus. Still, his eyes softened as he looked at her from above. Qinji didn't know what Fu Zheng was thinking. She turned back to finish washing the dishes, then brought the food to the table. Fu Zheng didn't move, but he helped set the table. "No need, young master," Qinji said, quickly stopping him. Fu Zheng didn't do any more work. Once the meal was set, he sat down. Qinji asked again if he needed help. He told her to stay and help him, so she stayed and served him the dishes. Fu Zheng ate well, occasionally glancing at her. He didn't look too much, but occasionally, her fragrance drifted by. He noticed that her chest seemed a little fuller, and there was another certain part of her he couldn't help but notice. He frowned. "Is something wrong, young master?" Qinji asked, noticing him looking at her. Fu Zheng didn't look back at her. He finished the meal and praised her cooking once again. "You really cook well, Qin Ma." He said he was going out. He'd eaten more than usual and had used more than others, putting down his chopsticks, wiping his mouth, and standing up to leave. The butler and driver were waiting outside. Qinji watched him leave, wondering where he was going that night. She didn't wait up for him and was relieved that she didn't have another nightmare. A few days later, Madame Fu asked about Fu Zheng again. Qinji told her that Fu Zheng hadn't returned. Madame Fu seemed unhappy but didn't say anything more. Fu Zheng returned one night after several days. Qinji was about to fall asleep when she heard someone outside. She went to see and saw Fu Zheng coming in with the driver. He had been drinking. The driver and butler helped him to the living room. Qinji quickly went to prepare some hangover medicine, ready to give it to Fu Zheng. "Young master," she said. "I don't want to drink," Fu Zheng replied, his long fingers brushing away the offered drink. "Young master," Qinji repeated, looking at Fu Zheng. He was sitting with his eyes closed, slightly tilting his head back against the sofa. His shirt was undone, revealing his sexy collarbones and Adam's apple, which moved slightly with every breath. His strong arms were visible, and his long, muscular legs rested loosely on the ground. She couldn't help but glance at him, though she couldn't quite describe how it made her feel. "What are you staring at, Qin Ma?" Fu Zheng sensed her gaze, hearing the sound of her approach. Though he had only had a little to drink, he still felt a bit tipsy. He looked at her, sensing her presence and her gaze. "Are you all right, young master? Drink this to sober up." Kinji offered the hangover medicine again, while the driver and butler also urged him to drink. "No, I'm fine." Fu Zheng looked at them and gestured for them to leave. "Young master, you should go upstairs," the driver said again. "No need," Fu Zheng responded impatiently, still speaking softly. "All right." The driver and butler knew Fu Zheng's personality. He had once been difficult to approach, but he had become much more docile recently. Now, with Kinji still around, they looked at her and told her to take care of him. Kinji nodded, assuring them she would. They left. Fu Zheng closed his eyes again, feeling a bit dizzy. He had been out meeting women, enjoying himself, but his mind kept drifting back to other things. "Young master, should I help you upstairs?" Kinji asked gently, holding the medicine out once more. "I don't need it," Fu Zheng said, his eyes on her. Kinji stepped forward to support him, but as she reached out, Fu Zheng moved to stand, staggering slightly. He was truly drunk now. Before she could properly hold him, he fell into her, and they both collapsed onto the sofa. Chapter 6 Impulsive. "Ah. Master." Kinji couldn't bear it anymore. She was pressed down by someone. She looked up and saw the master. She was pressed down by the master. The master was too heavy. The master's face was very, "Master, please move aside. I'm getting up. Don't hurt me." "You." Fu Zheng said "you" and wanted to say "don't move." "Do you know yourself?" The woman's fragrance was even more fragrant. It was all over her nose. He couldn't help but smell it. It was too fragrant. He was a little intoxicated. His eyes became darker, less gentle, more rebellious and wild. His mind changed automatically. The woman in front of him. "You, don't move." The voice was a little hoarse. "Master." Kinji didn't know why, but she was also a woman. She was older, but not old. She smelled the smell of the master. It was very nice and fresh. A man like the master had a strong and powerful body. He also had abdominal muscles. He was tall and had long legs and was strong all over. She hadn't felt that for a long time. He was gentle and elegant, and so beautiful that her heart beat faster. She was nervous and scared. She wanted to move again, and she found that the young master was even stronger. She didn't dare to think too much, and she pushed the young master. When the young master's breathing seemed to sink again, she thought the young master would get up. When he got up, she looked up and wanted to look at him. Unexpectedly, the young master came closer all of a sudden. She didn't know what was wrong and was at a loss. What was going on? "Didn't I say not to move? Why move?" The next moment, the young master on her body pressed down and kissed her, directly stealing her breath. "Young master." Kinji wanted to speak, but she didn't move. She opened her mouth and was blocked. It was too scary. She had never thought that the young master would be like this. Did the young master know what he was doing? Young master. She was Kin's mother. How could the young master treat her like this? She couldn't believe it, but her open mouth just made it convenient for Fu Zheng to think. He hugged her. He hugged her whole body, put his hands around the back of her head, and kissed her like this, kissing quickly and hard. Kinji's eyes went dark, and she didn't know what to do, but she couldn't go on like this. The young master was drunk, it must be true, he recognized the wrong person, right? "Young master, look carefully, I am Kin's mother, it's me, not someone else." She couldn't open her mouth, because it really couldn't work, she could only think of a way. "Who are you?" "Xia Xue." After a while, Fu Zheng, who had kissed enough, also asked. He stopped, his breathing was still unstable and a little anxious. Kinji wanted to say. His slender and powerful hands with distinct joints also began to move. "Kinji, young master." She wanted to shout, and she also wanted to push the young master away, her hands moved, and her whole body did. Fu Zheng stretched his hand to her. "Who are you?" After he said it again, he continued to kiss, which made people dizzy. Kinji couldn't hold on any longer. "Master, were you drunk and recognized the wrong person?" "It must be." She felt a little calmer, but her heartbeat was still fast, and so was her body. She couldn't go on like this, so she pushed again. "Where are you going?" Fu Zheng didn't let go, didn't relax. Kinji kept trying, and the man on her finally let go of her and relaxed. Fu Zheng looked down at her, shook his head, got up and left. Kinji lowered her head, got up from the ground, and quickly stood aside. Her mouth was still numb and wooden because she was kissed hard. She wished that all this hadn't happened, and so did her body. She felt like her mouth was swollen and uncomfortable. She glanced at the young master but couldn't see anything wrong. She apologized but didn't support the young master, and her tone was trembling. Fu Zheng put his hand on his forehead at this time. "It's okay, it's my fault, I recognized the wrong person." He turned and went upstairs. Kinji watched the young master leave, and she didn't know what to do. She squatted down and hugged herself. The young master was not the male lead. Shouldn't he be with the female lead? And what's wrong? Why is she like this? The young master just recognized the wrong person and was impulsive. But if she is still here, what should she do? Don't do it here. But she has to live, and her son has to go to school. Counting her own money, she really didn't expect such a thing to happen. The young master is not something she can think of. It's not so easy to resign. She looked up and went to the bathroom. She turned on the water and washed her body. She has a good figure. At the same time, upstairs, after Fu Zheng came up, he thought about something, touched his lips, took off his coat, and went to the bathroom. When he got inside, he looked at himself in the mirror. He took a bath again. He kissed that Kinma, and it was also for a moment. He looked at her face in front of him, nothing, but her lips kept talking, and they were still pink. At such an old age, her lips were still pink. He wanted to see what it smelled like. It was also the feminine fragrance on her body. Maybe mature women are like this, or it may be natural. He felt a little bit, wanted to see, try, whether it was the same as smelling, and was also drunk, so he kissed, but he didn't expect it to be sweet and fragrant. He thought about it, and when he thought of this, he raised his head, exposing his Adam's apple, and he took a bath. He was not so picky. He still knew the person he liked the most. He thought about it. Kinji had a strange dream that night. She seemed to dream about what happened with the young master. After waking up, her face blushed and her heart beat. She covered her chest. After a while, she got up, packed up, and recovered. She knew that her face would not be good. Seeing the housekeeper, she knew that the young master had left and was stunned for a while. The young master said last night that it was all thanks to Kinma, who was very nice. He drank too much and didn't know anything. "Please forgive me, Kinma," the housekeeper said to Kinma. Kinji looked at the housekeeper. The young master said so she didn't have to leave. The young master said very clearly that he drank too much and was drunk and didn't know anything. The young master didn't care anymore, and neither did she. Chapter 7. Qingmai. She was relieved. She was still a little worried about seeing the young master. It was not only embarrassing, but there were other things. However, the young master didn't come back here for a few days. He didn't come back. 2 days later, she found an opportunity to ask the housekeeper. The housekeeper said that the young master had something to do and went to see someone. Kinji gradually realized that the young master might have gone to see his first love, Qingmai. It was the request of the lady. The lady always wanted this lady to be the second young master's wife. You don't know, this lady is the eldest lady of the Lu family, the only lady of the Lu family. The young master and him are well matched, and she is also his first love. She was very good to the second young master at the beginning. They have been together for 3 years. She is the most suitable person in all aspects around the second young master. It's just that there was a misunderstanding that separated them. Now the second young master has returned to China, and Miss Lu is about to come back. The old lady wants them to reconcile. It would be good if the two families could intermarry. You also know the Fu family is like this. Oh no. Kinji knew, how could she not know, it was also written in the book. Although this one is not the heroine, she is also the first love, the woman the young master once loved, and can be regarded as a female supporting role. A lot of it is written, which adds a lot of difficulties to the young master and the heroine. The ex-girlfriend is not either, but the little son heroine who appeared later. The second young master doesn't mind, maybe it will work. The housekeeper said again, smiled and smiled. Kinji nodded and didn't ask anymore. She knew that the young master had something to do and went to find his first love. She felt at ease. The young master won't be back for a while. Wait, you should take a rest too. Maybe he'll be on the news. Oh. There's no photo of Miss Lu, but you'll know when you see it. Kinji also saw the news on her phone soon, about the young master, who was with a girl who was very young and beautiful. The young master was indeed with his first love. She looked at it for a moment and didn't look at it again. The photo on the news was very beautiful. She only saw it at a glance. The young master was smiling, gentle and elegant, very different from what she saw. She felt that this young master was a young master. It said that some young master and his girlfriend were handsome and beautiful, and they matched well. I think I know them. Who is it? From the old Chen Fu family. Who is the Fu family? This is the novel entering reality. This is the CEO and his little wife, the rich lady and the rich young master, a strong alliance. This world is a novel, and we are the NPCs. She saw someone mention the identity of the young master, and there was a girl, but no one was sure who it was. It was indeed the eldest daughter of the Liu family. Someone else said something about novels, NPCs, she still understood, heard people say it, her son also mentioned it, rich people are the protagonists. They are not what they want, they can't get it no matter what. Rich people have a bowl for a lot of money, a car for millions, they are expensive even if it's tens of thousands, her son works so hard, where is the young master? She is not so extreme, just thinking about the past, her son also said that he would not be like that, he succeeded, and she also taught her son. She believes in her son. She closed the phone and didn't read anything else. Looking at the young master's appearance, he really won't come back here for the time being. She spent another day and received a call from her family. Her parents called her and asked her what she was thinking and why she didn't listen to her family. Why did they break up? If they didn't ask, she wouldn't know. I want to break up. Kinji said. Parents, you are not young anymore. You can keep working. Wouldn't it be better to find a man to rely on? I don't want to rely on anyone. Kinji said no. She didn't want to marry again. Her family was worried about her. There were also small places like this. Zia has grown up and will soon go to high school. It's normal for you to marry again. Dad said. Mom was the same, Gigi. I don't want to for the time being. Kinji said she wanted to work hard. If I hadn't met that bastard, it wouldn't be like this. If you married a better man, you wouldn't be so lonely and live so far away. Don't say it, Mom. Kinji still said that she didn't want to marry and didn't need to introduce her to anyone. She also told the man about his situation. Parents stopped talking. They didn't seem to expect it, we don't know, but you are not young anymore. The man you find can't be married. They are all divorced. It's hard to find a good one. Mom and Dad, that's it. Kinji didn't want to say anything more. When will you get your salary? Or find another one? Men are all like that. Mom still said. Kinji didn't listen. She said she would send them money. There was still half a month before the salary was paid. They were so ignorant. Rural people were like this. They had no knowledge. They were just afraid that she couldn't get married, as if women were born to get married. After divorce, it was better to remarry with children, otherwise it would be embarrassing and people would say that. Of course, the most important thing in their eyes was her brother and sister. Her sister didn't look for her, and her brother didn't look for her. She would have to send them money when the time came. Thinking about it, her phone rang again. It was a familiar number, the man who broke up with her. She didn't answer it, but she didn't expect that he called several times in a row. She didn't want to answer it. At this moment, her phone rang again, but it was not that number, but a strange number. She thought it might be that man, or it might not be. The man found another woman, who was wearing heavy makeup and didn't look like an ordinary person. They all broke up. It might be something else. She thought about it and picked up the phone. As soon as it was connected, you damned woman, you bitch, bitch. How do you not answer my call and hang up on me? Who do you think you are? I called your family and told them that you are a shameless bitch. You are old and your face is full of wrinkles. Your family is afraid that you can't get married, so they found me. I am good to you, but you still break up with me. Why do you do that? Where do you get the face? You already have a son, but you still want to get married and not let anyone touch you. You are not afraid of people knowing. Aren't you afraid that I will find you? Do you think I can't find you? Why are you looking for me? Where are you looking for me? We broke up, don't you think I'm too old? Kinji said, and then turned off the phone. You dare to break up with me, this bitch, do you want to hang up the phone? I will find you, just wait. The last word, wait, was not finished, with a fierce tone. Kinji was still a little scared, but when she thought about where this place was and whose Fu family was, she was not so scared. She was not afraid. She prepared to go into the kitchen, clean up, and prepare the meal. At this time, a voice sounded, "Who is calling Kinma?" Kinji looked in the direction of the voice and saw the young master. The young master had returned and was standing at the door, opening the door. He was still the same, elegant and gentle, wearing a grey shirt, which made him look even better, revealing his strong and slender arms with a famous watch and the other hand holding a suit jacket. He looked at her and walked in. Chapter 8 As if it never happened. "Master!" Kinji called out. Fu Zheng looked at her. He hadn't seen her for several days. He seemed to hear something, but it had nothing to do with him. He said he heard her call just now. "Is there something wrong, Kinma?" "Nothing," Kinji said. Fu Zheng asked Kinma how she was these days. He couldn't tell anything else. "And what happened that night," as if that night had never happened. "That's right," with a gentle smile. Kinji thought that Master was like this. Master hadn't changed. It was she who thought too much. She forgot. She said, "Master is back." Fu Zheng walked in front of her and nodded. Kinji asked Master if he had dinner and what he wanted to eat. "What to eat?" Fu Zheng stared at her and said that everything Kinma cooked was delicious. Kinji knew it. He walked past her and went upstairs. Looking at Master's back, he looked elegant. The whole body said these two words. She went back to the kitchen and cooked. Her heart was completely calmed down. She cooked the food carefully. Turned out of the kitchen, took it out, put it away one by one, and looked up. Fu Zheng went upstairs. Someone was still talking to him. He lowered his head and said, he had been talking all the time, and said to the headset, "I'm back, I don't want to go out." After a while, he didn't speak. He clearly forgot about Kinma downstairs. He came back to get something. After getting the things, he sat down, looked at it, got up and went downstairs. Kinji was going to go upstairs to find the young master. When she saw the young master coming down, she said to the young master, "The food is ready, young master." Fu Zheng asked her what she made. Kinji said, "Sweet and sour pork ribs, stewed chicken, steamed meat, etc., and fish, steamed." "I'm not hungry, so I won't eat. I have something else to do." Fu Zheng still refused, smiled and left it for Kinma to eat, asking Kinma to eat well. He still had to pick someone up, and someone was waiting. Okay. Kinji originally thought that she would stay with the young master. The young master would use it. The young master had something to do and had to pick up people. There were also people waiting. She thought of someone. That was the young master's first love, Miss Lu, whose name was Lu Qingqing. The young master must have lived well with this person. Don't let Miss Lu wait any longer. Madam Qin, use it well. Use it more. Madam Qin is still a little thinner. When Fu Zheng said this, he couldn't help but think of something, and he left. Kinji sent the young master out. The housekeeper was waiting outside. The young master left. She went back and ate the overcooked dishes alone. The unfinished ones were put in the ice cream. The young master would never eat them. After putting everything away, the lady didn't know. Maybe she knew. 2 days later, she heard the housekeeper mention that the lady was very happy. The second young master and Miss Lu were together every day, and Miss Lu often visited the lady. The two may have talked to each other, so what should be done? The young master looked really reconciled with Miss Lu. Good things are coming, and it's even better. Kinji knew it wouldn't happen, it was impossible. The young master's ex-girlfriend was coming back, and the heroine wasn't too far away from appearing, so when the heroine came out, there wouldn't be anything else to do. No, there was something. The young master had achieved a lot, everything was in the book, he was worthy of being the hero. She wanted to go see her son, but her son said he was busy for the time being. She could only wait. While waiting, she thought about whether she should resign, but she was still thinking about money, this job, and everything, mainly her son. If she left, farther away, it might be good for her son, and her death, the book only said she died, not how she died. She didn't know, she could only guess, was she sick? Or an accident? If it was an accident, she didn't know when it would come, even if she knew it roughly. She wanted to check it out. She also made an appointment, told the housekeeper, went out, and took a taxi to the hospital. Fu Zheng was accompanied by a woman who was dressed very delicately and looked very beautiful. She had a pure and clean feeling, like a rich lady. She wore a white top and skirt, put on makeup, and had straight hair. She looked very well behaved and ladylike and carried a white bag. At this moment, she was looking at jewelry. Right next to him, he sat on a sofa and was served sincerely by the service staff. He listened and watched, with an elegant and calm expression, gentle and elegant, a half-exposed watch, a graceful and casual posture, and strong and powerful long legs, a stylish upper body, and a shirt, which made him look more stylish. The same was true for his hair. He looked down at the time on his hand, and his slender and powerful hand with distinct joints turned the watch on his hand and rubbed the surface of the watch, as if he was careless and intentional. "Does this look good?" Lu Qingqing looked at him coquettishly and pulled it. Fu Zheng raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. Something flashed in his deep black eyes. He looked at her casually, smiling, and was quite happy. "It looks good. It looks good." Lu Qingqing asked again, very happy, a simple and innocent person. Fu Zheng looked at her carefully for a few times and said it looked good and that it suited her very well. He looked at her and stared at her, with more smiles in his eyes, the same affection. Lu Qingqing blushed and her heart beat fast. There was more blush on her fair face. She was even happier and wanted to called Brother Fu. Then this one. "Well, buy it if you like it." Fu Zheng finished speaking and took out the card from his arms and asked people to pay the bill without saying a word. The waiter took the card respectfully and left. Lu Qingqing wanted to say that she came here by herself, carrying the bag, but she didn't say it. She was happy that Brother bought it for her. It was the same when they were together before. She still liked it. Brother Lu has changed a little. He is still good to her. She knows what her family thinks. She wants to hold Brother Fu's hand, but she doesn't. She wants to hold Brother Fu's arm. How nice it is. She misses him and regrets breaking up, but... Fu Zheng thought of the old woman. Maybe it was because she smelled good and had a pink mouth. She was still so old and sweet. She missed that kiss when she saw him 2 days ago. He also wanted to go back. "Brother Fu." Lu Qingqing called him. He looked at her and her eyes made her blush. "Brother Fu." Fu Zheng didn't say anything. Soon after, he took people back to the apartment, opened the door, looked up and found it was very quiet. He didn't see the person he wanted to see, that woman. Where was the old woman Qin Ma? He looked a few times and didn't see anyone. He didn't look for her deliberately, but she was not there. He still looked around until he went upstairs and returned to the room. Why wasn't the old woman at home? What did she do? Or did she resign? He didn't hear the housekeeper say, would she resign? There was some displeasure, unhappiness, and a little impatience in his eyes, but he was still himself. Chapter 9. Find her. He placed his slender, strong, and bony hand on his collar, and slowly unbuttoned his collar, looking at the huge bed. His throat was exposed and his throat moved slightly, sexy and full of tension. Someone. He wanted to find someone. He called the housekeeper. When the housekeeper heard that it was the young master who called, he immediately asked the young master what was going on. Who is the second young master? I'm back. Fu Zheng said. The second young master is back. The housekeeper immediately asked what was going on with the second young master. Fu Zheng asked why he didn't see Qin Ma. Qin Ma. The housekeeper heard that since the housekeeper was not at home, the second young master must have asked, and he said where he went. Qin Ma asked him for leave from the Technical Supervision Bureau and went to the hospital for a checkup. Hospital? Fu Zheng raised his eyebrows when he heard the word hospital. That woman, that old woman went to the hospital. Is she feeling uncomfortable? He asked gently, with concern. Motherkin is just feeling a little uncomfortable, said the housekeeper. Oh, okay. Fu Zheng knew it, so there was nothing to say. It didn't look like there was anything wrong. He squinted his eyes and was about to put down his phone. Housekeeper, second young master, are you looking for Motherkin? No need. Fu Zheng thanked the housekeeper directly, very politely and gentlemanly. He put down his phone, holding the phone in his slender hand. He wanted to see her. In the hospital, Qinji took her ID card, registered first, and then went to check her whole body. It didn't matter if she spent more money. She still had some money, especially after she came to the Fu family. She saved a lot. She took X-rays. Some places had to wait, and some places didn't. She went to the hospital and there was nothing wrong. These are all good. When you are old, you need to check more. It's right to check once a year. The female doctor adjusted her glasses. Your uterus and other aspects are very good. Qinji thought of the past again, when she gave birth to her son. When she came to her senses, the female doctor stared at her and asked her if she had given birth before. She met the doctor's eyes. She was a little afraid of doctors, who always stared at people sharply. After knowing that she had given birth, she nodded and said that the situation was very good. Other things will be waiting. She knew that she was in good health and would know other things. She was ready to go back. On the way, her only friend called her and asked her to come over to help. "What's wrong?" Kinji asked. Her good friend Linlan said that her daughter was a little uncomfortable and someone came to see her and wanted to take her child away. "Who is it?" She became a little anxious. "Come over first." Linlan was a little anxious. Kinji said she would come right away and asked if she had taken her away. Linlan said no, she had not agreed, and her daughter did not want to go, no matter how rich she was. Kinji knew. She told the taxi driver where she was going. It was not too far. Her good friend Linlan was someone she met after coming to S City. Her family valued boys over girls. She did not study much and left home alone, worked as a nanny, and later opened a hair salon, met a man, gave birth to a daughter. It seemed that the man was rich, and later the man found another woman to marry and abandoned her. She raised her daughter alone. And finally her daughter grew up, went to high school, and got better and better. But in the book Linlan's daughter Lin Miao Miao is also the female supporting role in the book. Later, Linlan was gone, so she and her son worked together to deal with the male protagonist. Miao Miao seemed to recognize her father for this, but she was still not as good as the young master. She seemed to like her son, but her son liked the female protagonist. She frowned and arrived outside Linlan's hair salon soon after. Something seemed to have fallen outside the hair salon. The door was closed. She knocked on the door and there was a sound inside. The door opened and she saw Linlan. Linlan usually dressed beautifully and delicately. Now she looked a little tired and embarrassed. She asked her if she was injured. Linlan shook her head and said no. "Thank you, Kinji, for coming. I was afraid you were busy." "It's okay." Kinji came to wash her hair to meet her. She looked inside and didn't see Miao Miao. She asked. "She's inside. Take her to see a doctor." Linlan said that it was not easy for her to go in this state. Kinji then discovered that she had a wound on her face. What did she want to say? Call the police? He just wanted to take his daughter back because he had no children and he never had one. Linlan said that her daughter didn't want to go either. Kinji said, "Let's go to the hospital together, pack up, you have to go in this state." Lin Miao Miao came out with a small body. She was small, with a round face, and she looked like a child. She called Auntie Kin cutely and then looked at her mother and said, "Let's go together." Kinji also persuaded. Linlan said she would not go, let them go. Kinji understood her, took Miao Miao to go first, went to the hospital not far away. Miao Miao's hand was slightly injured. She said that she was scratched when pushing, bleeding. The wound was not big. She asked someone to get more medicine and took it back to Linlan. Linlan was also bumped when pushing. What if it comes again? Kinji was worried. If he comes again, call the police. I called the police today, too. They left. I shouldn't have been so impulsive. They suddenly came to my house to take my daughter away. There were so many people, I was worried and took action, and then my daughter helped me. Linlan said with great momentum. She looked like a strong woman, smart and capable. She still didn't clean up, but it was better than before. You can't be impulsive. Kinji said. If I was impulsive, the police would say it was my fault. Linlan talked about her injuries and her daughter's. Lin Miao Miao, Mom, don't do this again. Call the police again next time. Linlan said, there was only this way. Always like this. Kinji said, the book only said that Miao Miao's father was very powerful and didn't say much. Linlan couldn't deal with it, but Miao Miao didn't want to go. If Linlan didn't die and she didn't get into trouble, it wouldn't be like what was written in the book. But she couldn't help either, just said to call her if you need anything. Okay, thank you, today too. Linlan was serious. Lin Miao Miao also called Aunt Kin and asked about her brother. Kinji now likes Miao Miao more and says she is very good. Let's see what he does in the future. He doesn't want to lose face. Linlan said and asked her if she had eaten. Lin Miao Miao was also cute and dressed simply, unlike Linlan. Kinji said she was going back and she still had to work. How are you doing in the Fu family? Linlan asked again and Lin Miao Miao listened curiously. Kinji said a little bit. The young master was the male protagonist but didn't say it. Linlan asked about some things in the Fu family and knew it. Now the young master is back and he should work hard. He didn't mention the kiss that night. It shouldn't have happened, and she pretended it didn't exist. Lin Lan listened. The second young master Fu is back. What did Lin Miao think of? Chapter 10 Deliberate or Misunderstanding. Qinji didn't say anything more. She looked at the time and told them to have a good rest. If they had anything to ask her, she left. Lin Lan nodded and called a car for her. Qinji first found a noodle place and ate a bowl of noodles. She was almost done. She was hungry. Like Lin Lan and Miao Miao, she should have a good rest. Soon she returned to the apartment. Slowly, she thought about some things. She and Lin Lan were not lucky people, but they were lucky. She was going to give her son money. She got on the elevator, opened the door and went in. Mother Qin. Someone called her. She turned around and saw that it was the housekeeper. The housekeeper said that the young master was back. The young master was back. She looked inside and knew that the young master had been back for a while. She was inside and upstairs. She was nervous for a moment and turned back to look up. Inside. Upstairs, Fu Zheng looked at his watch and the time. How long had passed? He looked at his watch more than once. He had been in the hospital for so long. Did he want to call? He was also thinking whether he should stay that day and eat the food made by Qin Ma. He thought that someone was looking for him. He was wondering whether he should go out. Finally, he heard a sound. He stood in front of the window, his tall figure reflected. He turned and looked at the door behind him. The door was a little open. He looked at it. After a while, he saw the person coming up, Qin Ma. He saw her. Master. Qinji walked up slowly. She called softly and lowered her head. She didn't know that the master was back. The master had been waiting for a long time. What did he want to eat? Where did Qin Ma go? I heard she went to the hospital and was not feeling well. Fu Zheng faced her, took a few steps forward, elegant and gentle, and asked her gently and caringly. He was not in a good mood. He had been waiting for a long time. When had he waited for anyone? Nothing, just a little dizzy, so I went to see a doctor. The doctor said it was okay. Qinji said, raised his head and looked at the master, but did not meet his eyes. Fu Zheng wanted to see her eyes and lips. It was not intentional. They were pink and a little tempting. His eyes were fixed on them. He couldn't move away. He was thinking about it and savoring it. Mother Qin should have had a physical examination. If you want to work in the Fu family, you can't not have a physical examination. Qinji said yes, but she was afraid. Of course she had a physical examination when she came to the Fu family. No matter who is in the Fu family, they must be in good health. Fu Zheng asked again if there was anything else she should go to see her. Qinji said she knew that she was in good health. She also said so. Did Mother Qin go to the hospital? Fu Zheng took another step closer and stared at her. Qinji felt inexplicably uncomfortable. The young master's eyes seemed to be fixed on somewhere. She didn't know where she was fixed. She nodded and said yes. She didn't want to talk about other things, her friends' things. At this time, Fu Zheng took one step after another with his thighs, almost walking in front of Qinji. He stopped. He was tall and looked down at her. Mother Qin looks good. Qinji didn't say anything else. Fu Zheng said what he wanted to eat, all of which were difficult dishes, and asked if Qin Ma could cook them. Qinji said yes. She lowered her head and turned to go out. She went downstairs to make dinner. Fu Zheng thought about Qin Ma's face and the fragrance on her body. He could smell it as soon as he got close. It was the same every time. She fascinated him, and her lips, her mouth, pink. No woman had such a figure, the touch, and the feeling of kissing. He lowered his head again and squinted at the slender and powerful big hands with distinct joints. After Qinji went downstairs, she went to the kitchen, turned around and went back to her room to put down her cloth bag. She didn't take out the things in the cloth bag, and hurried back to the kitchen. The housekeeper brought fresh air-shipped dishes and put them away silently. She cooked seriously. Seafood abalone is also the young master's favorite, and she also knows how to cook lobster. The ingredients of the Fu family are all air-shipped. Looking at the top lobster in her hand and several home-cooked dishes, she put them on the table and was about to go back to find the young master, and saw the young master standing behind her. The young master didn't know when he stood behind her. Just standing there, looking at her, she suddenly met the young master's tall figure and his elegant and gentle face. The young master gave her a sense of closeness, just like when she was upstairs before. Young master, she took a step back and called out. Is Kinma ready? Fu Zheng looked at her and asked gently, and he returned to the state, or always like this? Young master. Qinji called again, saying that it was done and the young master could eat. These were all the dishes ordered by the young master. Fu Zheng nodded, looked in the direction of the restaurant, and walked into the restaurant on the side. Qinji followed and entered the restaurant. Fu Zheng sat down. He took a look and Qinji introduced him to him. He knew it and started to use it, asking Qinma to help her peel it. Qinji helped the young master peel the seafood. Fu Zheng used it and felt the fragrance she brought again. He used it quite well and praised Qinma. Qinji thanked him. After using it, Fu Zheng raised his lower lip to Qinma. Qinma, can I ask you something? Qinji didn't know what to say and met the young master's eyes. What kind of perfume is Qinma using? It smells good. Fu Zheng asked very seriously and gently. Qinji didn't know why the young master asked, she smelled good. Fu Zheng smiled and said that he just smelled it, and asked, Qinma, don't misunderstand, don't think too much. Qinji didn't think too much, but the young master looked like. Fu Zheng said that he really smelled it, don't think too much. He got up and went out with his windbreaker, he was going out. Qinji watched the young master leave, go out, and leave so casually. She relaxed again. The young master left, and she could relax again. She sat down for a while, watching the young master use up and not use up. There was still a lot of unused. The housekeeper came in a while and mentioned that Qinma could eat the rest, and they could too. After all were divided. Qinji looked at it and used a little. Of course, the young master ate the best. The book was even more exaggerated, that is, in the future, you can get whatever you want. She was half full, and everyone had finished eating. She went to the kitchen, worked for a while, took off her gloves, and washed her hands. She cleaned up, went back to her room, took a shower, rested, and looked at her phone. She flipped through the pages. She also found news about the young master, which was the news about the young master today. She stopped her hand. The photo was taken during the day. At that time, she was in the hospital. The young master tilted his head and wore sunglasses. As always, he was handsome and elegant. Miss Lu tilted her head to look at him. The two of them were holding hands and were very intimate. I don't know what they were talking about. The young master seemed to want to kiss Miss Lu, and Miss Lu seemed to be waiting. The young master was still with Miss Lu. Some people said that they were buying a ring. Someone above speculated that the two families were really going to get married. She couldn't tell what she felt in her heart. Anyway, she breathed a sigh of relief. She didn't watch it for too long. She didn't like it too much. She closed her eyes, rested, and fell asleep. Chapter 11 approaching her again. Fu Zheng was looking for someone in a black Maybach. When the car stopped at a place, someone got in the car. After getting in, Fu Zheng looked at Ju Qin. The two looked at each other. Fu Zheng asked if he had seen him. Ju Qin shook his head no. He was still in a bad mood. Fu Zheng knew what he was doing at a glance. It was still for that woman. They were the same, but different. The one Ju Qin liked was married. Where is Xiao Yu? He asked again. Ju Qin said, still waiting. They went to pick up Xiao Yu and had to meet someone. Of course, they had to do something when they came back. There was still something else to do. They went and soon picked up Xiao Yu and went to do things together. After the things were done, it was a little late. Xiao Yu said he wanted to relax. Ju Qin didn't want to go, and Fu Zheng didn't want to go either. He wanted to go back. He had his own ideas. Why don't you want to go? Xiao Yu couldn't believe that when he saw two grown men, two handsome guys, no one was going, and he was the only one going. He looked at the two of them with his peach blossom eyes. Ju Qin was still the same, he was going back. You did it for that woman, she's married, you did it back then. Xiao Yu was going to say something, squinting his peach blossom eyes, romantic and affectionate, but in the end he didn't say anything, afraid of being beaten, forget it, the affectionate Ju Die Xiao. He asked Fu Xiao again. Fu Zheng said directly that he was going back to rest, he was a little tired. Why are you going back to rest so early? Let's play together and drink some more wine. Xiao Yu still said. Fu Zheng said he didn't want to play anymore, he was tired and drunk. So little, drunk, you are tired too. Xiao Yu didn't believe it and looked at him. Fu Zheng ignored him. After they went their separate ways, he went back. When they got to the apartment, he was still a little drunk. The housekeeper came out and called him a young master. Fu Zheng didn't say anything and looked up. Qinji was asleep at this time and was suddenly awakened. She thought the young master would not come back, so who would he go with? She knew it was the young master who came back. The young master drank a little more. She went out and looked at the living room. She saw the young master sitting in front of the sofa. The housekeeper was gone. No one was worried about the young master and his innocence. She walked over, bent over in front of the young master, and called carefully. Young master. The young master didn't open his eyes. Didn't he hear it? The young master drank again. The young master seemed to like drinking. It wasn't written in the books or novels. She was going to call again. Fu Zheng didn't need to open his eyes. He could smell the fragrance coming towards him. It wasn't strong, but faint. It just floated over, wisps of it. It was from a woman, as if she was seducing people. She opened her eyes and looked at. Young master. Qinji called again and met the young master's eyes. The young master opened his eyes. She wanted to take a step back and stand up straight. Fu Zheng just looked at her. This old woman. Young master, do you want to drink the hangover soup? Qinji still asked the same question. Fu Zheng looked at her and said no. Qinji asked if the young master had drunk too much and was drunk, and whether he wanted to ask someone to help him. Fu Zheng said directly, come on, Qin Ma, help me up, and stretched out his hand. The hand was slender and powerful, and each finger had distinct joints, which was very beautiful. There were very few hands that were so beautiful. Qinji felt that they were more beautiful than hers. Young master. She spoke again, and still stepped forward to help the young master up. She asked the young master to be careful. Fu Zheng smelled the fragrance on her body and felt that her hand was still strong. He did not stand up, but pulled Qin Ma with great force. Qinji did not stand firmly for a while, and her whole expression changed, and her body fell on the young master. In an instant, she wanted to stabilize herself. Wanted to do something, it was too late. Young master. She could only scream, but she didn't dare to be too loud, because she was afraid someone would come in and see her. Fortunately, there was no camera installed in the apartment that could see her. The young master disagreed, so she fell on him anyway. Fu Zheng took Qin Ma on his body calmly. He held her hand and hugged her, then looked at the woman on his body while smelling the stronger scent of the woman, and smiled at Qin Ma. Master, I'm sorry, you pulled me. Qinji came back to her senses and remembered that she once again felt the firmness of the young master and smelled the fresh smell of the young master and the gentle, young master. She supported herself with both hands and wanted to get up, she and the male lead. Qin Ma. Fu Zheng screamed again and found a little of her scattered hair. He stretched out his fingers and gently hooked it for a while and then approached her. Qinji saw that she was particularly nervous, very nervous, she and the young master. What happened to the young master? Master, you are drunk again, I am Qin Ma, let go. She said again. She remembered, master. She was a little angry. I am drunk. Fu Zheng said at this time, trying to bury his head in her. She made him a little drunk, he frowned and glanced at her, looking like he was drunk. Qinji told the master to let go, she got up, Fu Zheng still pulled her again, approached and kissed her. Qinji, master, I am Mother Qin. She struggled, panicked, her heartbeat quickened, she wanted to say something else. Did he make a mistake again? She is not the heroine nor the supporting actress. Fu Zheng let go as if he had never kissed her before, not thinking too much, not wanting to hear her call him, not wanting to hear her talk, not wanting at all. She was still so pink and sweet, just like what he saw and thought, even sweeter than he thought, with the feminine scent on her body. His habit was really known to very few people. He could also empty his mind and not think about other people. Master. Qinji was about to say something, but Fu Zheng took the opportunity to kiss her again, and kissed her, hugged her, her body was close to his, thinking about the last time, his hand moved again. Qinji felt bad, she kept shouting that she wanted to bite the young master, and her body was moving. Fu Zheng wanted to, but thinking about Qin Ma, this woman, he finally stopped. He just wanted to try again, maybe he didn't like it, and felt that it was nothing but an older woman, between him and her. He held her with his slender, strong and well-defined hands, moved again, and let go. Qinji couldn't breathe, she didn't know what to say, and it took a while for her to recover. She looked at the young master, what was going on? Young master, what are you doing? She looked at the young master angrily. Fu Zheng rubbed both sides of his forehead, leaned on the sofa, and closed his eyes again. Qin Ma. I feel bad, I thought you were her, go in and rest, I'm drunk, sorry. Chapter 12. Want to resign. Kinji turned and left. She went back to her room. Fu Zheng lay alone, looking at the sky above him, wondering what he was thinking. He got up and left too. That night, Kinji took a long bath. She took off her clothes, washed in the bathroom, and there was nothing else on her after washing. She didn't want to look. She was still young because she was beautiful, and she was deceived and lived with a man, but she didn't remember that man. Mouth. She brushed her teeth several times and she felt that there was no taste of the young master. The young master kissed her again, and who did he think she was? She didn't have a good impression of the young master, or the male protagonist. She had a good impression of him before, and when she first came to the young master, he was also gentle and elegant. Knowing that it was a character in the book, it didn't matter. He actually kissed her. He said he recognized the wrong person and thought she was another woman. He did this again. She shouldn't have helped the young master when he was drunk. She thought about it at that time. She should have known what the young master wanted. The book said that the young master wanted to help his ex-girlfriend. He still had this girl in his heart. The young master's ex-girlfriend was studying dance abroad. They didn't know how they broke up. The young master kept thinking about her. The young master's kiss was too fierce and intense for her to speak. It was a little better this time, but it was almost the same. It seemed that he wanted to eat her. But no, the young master didn't eat him. How old was she from the young master? The young master was in his 30s, not yet 30. How old was her son? She lay on the bed and wrapped herself in the quilt. She was not young anymore. The dream was about what she had done with that man. That time was too far away. Don't. After waking up, she didn't see the young master again. The young master was gone. The housekeeper said that the young master had gone out for something. Kinji thought that the young master was with Miss Lu. She told the housekeeper that she wanted to resign. When the housekeeper Li Bo heard her words, he said, "Why do you want to resign?" "Did I hear you correctly?" "Yes," Kinji said. The housekeeper said, "Are you kidding me, Aunt Kin? Why do you want to resign? There is nothing wrong. Aren't you short of money? Don't you want to make more money?" Kinji was like this. She was short of money. The young master would not kiss her unless he recognized the wrong person. If he wanted to resign, you have to explain the reason and in advance. The housekeeper said that those who had signed the contract before and those who worked in the Fu family had requirements when they came in and out. Kinji knew. The young master also said that he was grateful to Aunt Kin last night and he was embarrassed. The housekeeper said with a smile, "The young master is a very good person. Last night, I troubled Kinma again." Kinji listened to what the housekeeper said. Did the young master apologize to her again? She didn't know. Afterwards, she saw that the day to transfer money to her son had come, so she called her son. Her son didn't answer her call, so she called again, several times. The son answered and she said she gave him the money. She immediately transferred money to her son, 3,000 yuan a month, and she transferred it to her son together and then asked him if he was free, she would go to see him. The son asked her to go tomorrow. She nodded and showed concern for her son. "Have you eaten a lot recently?" Son Kinzi, "Mom, it's fine, don't worry." Kinji still asked. Her heart was always soft when facing her son. She wanted to care more about him. She also cared about Lin Lan and Miao Miao. They were fine, nothing happened. No more came from there. She also saw the day of salary payment. It was almost time. She didn't know when she would die. If she was alive, she could find a job. Thinking of the results of the examination at the hospital yesterday, some of which were not out yet, she said goodbye to the housekeeper again and went out. She went to the hospital and saw the doctor yesterday. She knew that she still had no problems and was in good health. She felt relieved. "You checked everything?" The doctor said again. Kinji said to see. The female doctor adjusted her glasses and talked to her again to reassure her. The next day, she went to see her son. At the gate of her son's school, without waiting for a long time, her son ran out, "Mom." Kinji saw that her son was still fine and became happy. "Mom, you don't have to come often," Kinzi said. Kinji still wanted to come. She talked to her son for a while, and when it was almost time, she followed her son inside and went to his dormitory. There was no one in the dormitory, only her son, and he looked fine. She sat with him and ate something. She also brought some delicious food for her son. After that, the mother and son had a good meal in the school and she went back. When she returned to the apartment, she looked at her phone and saw the news about the young master again. It seemed that he was going abroad. She had not heard the housekeeper mention it. Nor had she heard of it. Is the young master going to find his ex-girlfriend at this time? He is going to reconcile, but Miss Lu, it seems that it is written in the book that the young master will go to find his ex-girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend returned to China later, but not at this time, and the heroine did not appear, so she did not think much about it. She glanced at the back of the young master. There were too many people praising him. She had never seen such a gentle and elegant young man, like the domineering president in the novel, a different gentle gentleman and elegant domineering president. She waited until the time for salary payment, and the housekeeper told her that her mobile phone had received her salary, and then the lady told her that she had done a good job. She did a good job. Looking at the lady's words that she had done a good job, was she really doing a good job? Thinking about something, she didn't think about it anymore. After seeing the salary clearly and saving it all, she transferred the main money to her family, 2,000 yuan, to her mother. After the transfer was completed, she also sent a message to transfer it to them. She also transferred 1,000 yuan to her sister and brother and kept the rest for herself to save later. She didn't say much. My parents called again. She looked at it. My parents asked her if she had received her salary or if she should go on a blind date again. They also cared about how she was doing. Knowing that she was doing well, they asked if she had extra money. Let her save it well. She said no and didn't want to go on a blind date. After a few words, she hung up. My parents seemed dissatisfied. She thought alone. My younger brother and sister sent a message to her, saying that my sister only had so much. Sister, you should give more, it's not enough. Sister, don't you want to take care of us anymore? Yes, sister, you were not like this before. You are married too. She only wrote these few words and went to work. However, her sister and brother still called her. She didn't answer. Maybe they were even more dissatisfied, but they still knew to care about her and ask her. The book didn't write that after she died, her parents and sister reacted as if they didn't exist. This was her not. There was still a strange number on her phone. Kinji, don't think about breaking up. That man. She frowned. Don't think about getting married. Do you think I can't find you? No man will want you. Chapter 13 Care. Abroad, Zheng came to find someone. He saw that he met someone after the matter was discussed. For the sake of career and cooperation, he thought of that person and wanted to go to see her. No, he still didn't go to find her. He stood in front of the French window, looking at the tall buildings below. This is Wall Street in the United States. He smoked a cigarette. His slender and powerful fingers with distinct joints picked up the box on the side and gently opened it. He picked up the scissors, opened the box, picked out a cigar, looked at it slowly, and cut it. After cutting, he put away the scissors and the box, raised his head, and took the customized lighter with one hand. He glanced at it, turned it in his hand, snapped it, and lit it. He then slowly lit the cigar. When the cigar was lit, he squinted his eyes and something appeared on Wen Y's face and he exhaled a puff of smoke. After he smoked for a while, someone came in and said something, and there was another woman asking if he wanted to accompany him. He didn't need it. What did he want? He looked outside, thinking about the old woman, that woman. He thought about it again, put the cigar in his mouth, inhaled a little bit, and exhaled a puff of smoke. Finally, he bit the cigarette again, and soon he went out with a smile. He returned to China soon. But he was also busy when he returned to China. Kinji didn't know. She didn't see any news about the young master and his ex-girlfriend. She didn't know anything. Half a month later, she knew that the young master had returned to China. He had returned to China a long time ago. After returning, he was a little busy. He was busy with things and accompanied by other people. He didn't come back. She knew that it was not easy for her to resign. She stayed. The man on her phone kept sending messages. She blocked him. There were new strange numbers and she didn't go out much. I don't know why the middle-aged man blocked him. After a few days, she found that she saw photos of the young master again and news about him. It was still with his first love, Miss Lu. The two of them went shopping together, went to the amusement park together, and drove a supercar to go shopping. They were photographed. Basically, they commented on the car he drove and the watch he wore. They were all worth tens of millions. He was also handsome, too elegant and gentle to the point of feeling like a gentleman. In particular, there are some photos of him wearing gold-rimmed glasses which makes people feel dizzy with handsomeness. He is a complete gentleman. Many people screamed and commented that he is too rich. Some people even said that he is from a noble family. Some people said that he is from the Fu family, the second young master. Miss Lu was also disgusted. I saw her last time. She looked more and more beautiful. She and Mr. Fu are a bit mismatched, but she is also a young lady. She is not in the same world as everyone else. They also went shopping together and went to the amusement park together. So loving. It is said that they are childhood sweethearts. It's so beautiful. Many people asked if it was true. Qinji didn't expect that the young master and Miss Lu went to the amusement park. It was unexpected, but it was not considered. Miss Lu wanted to play, so the young master must accompany her. Supercars, she saw it below when she came here and knew that the young master had many cars. She cleaned the young master's watch and there was nothing in the young master's cloakroom. No matter how expensive it is, the Fu family is different. Going shopping is not a big deal. The Lu family is not bad. The heroine seemed to have appeared once before the ex-girlfriend came back. She felt that the young master looked different with glasses. He looked like a scum. She took back her phone. Someone also took pictures of him going to the hotel with Miss Lu, sending Miss Lu back and staying together. She didn't look at it again. A few days later, the housekeeper told her that the young master went back to the old house with Miss Lu. Madame asked when they were together, but the young master didn't reply. Miss Lu was shy. It seemed that they were together. The Lu family didn't say anything. It would be nice if there was a grandson of the young master. It looked like the young master was close to Miss Lu. Qinji looked at the housekeeper. Is the young master so close? He looked at his gentle smile, so he should be. The young master and Miss Lu have a child and the lady is happy. The housekeeper said again. Even the child was thought of. Qinji listened with a smile and heard the housekeeper ask Qinma if she wanted to find another person to marry. The housekeeper was old. Qinji didn't want to. The housekeeper said it was a pity. Qinji saw the young master again one night. She prepared a meal and ate it alone. She chatted with her son on WeChat. After her son went to work, she took a bath. She wiped her hair clean and it smelled very good, as did her body. It was late at night and suddenly there was a sound outside. She came out and saw someone coming in at the door. There was the housekeeper and the young master Fu Zheng. There was a woman standing next to them. The woman looked beautiful and supported the young master. He drank again. The young master was drunk again. She didn't go forward immediately. She smelled a little alcohol. The next second, someone looked over. She looked over and didn't see the young master. The young master seemed to look at her. She stopped and her heart skipped a beat. The housekeeper saw her and called Qinma. The young master drank too much and came back. She responded. There was also a woman who looked at her. She had seen her before. The other party also looked her up and down and called Fu Shao, be careful and help him come in. She moved aside a little and the woman glanced at her again and helped the young master to sit on the sofa inside. The housekeeper pulled her. Qinma, why don't you take care of the young master? The young master has someone to take care of him. Qinji was careful. The housekeeper looked inside and thought about it, but didn't say anything. He just asked to prepare some drinks for the young master. Qinji was just right, and she didn't need to take care of him. She heard the noise and went into the kitchen. The housekeeper went in and seemed to ask the young master if he wanted anything to drink. The young master told him not to. The housekeeper came out and said something to her and left. Qinji didn't go out. She waited and waited. As long as she didn't go out, she would be fine. She didn't hear any sound. After a while, someone came to call her. She looked out and saw a beautiful woman with long curly hair. Even the hair strands were exquisite. The skirt she wore was also a big brand. The bag was also. Even the hair strands were different. Looking down at her from above, as if to see what was different about her. You are Qin's mother. The second young master is looking for you. Miss? Qinji called out, what about you? What do you want to see me for? What does the young master want her for? Aren't you just taking care of people? The woman Junin looked at the woman in front of her again. She said something herself, really couldn't see anything. A servant, she told the woman to take good care of Fu Shao. If he hadn't asked her to stay and take care of her, she wanted to stay and take care of him personally. No matter what she did, it would be better to take off her clothes to take care of her. Fortunately, it was not her who stayed to take care of her, but just a servant. She said it in detail, as if Fu Xiao couldn't be bad at all. Qinji didn't want to take care of the young master, it would be better for this lady to stay. She didn't know who she was, but she was definitely not an ordinary person around the young master. Chapter 14. You can't escape. Miss, you're not staying. I do, but you are the servant, Mr. Fu said so. Juning stopped talking. Otherwise, she would not have come. She realized that she had said something bad. She stopped and looked at her again, and said, I leave it to you, you have to take good care of it for me. She was about to leave. She wanted to say something to Mr. Fu again, but she didn't dare. She walked away in her high heels. Qinji looked at the young lady's curvaceous figure. She had a great body, was better and taller than a model, was sexy, charming and beautiful. The young master thought that there would be nothing wrong with her. With such a beautiful young lady and Miss Lu, she just stood there. It was quiet outside. It was quiet for a long time. There was no sound from the living room, and the young master didn't make any sound. She breathed a sigh of relief and waited for a while. It seemed that the young master had fallen asleep. Went up. She didn't know. After feeling something was not right, she prepared to go out and take a look. Thinking about it, she went out. When she got outside, she looked towards the hall and saw that the small light in the living room was on. From a distance, it seemed that the young master was really asleep. She paused, knowing that it would not work no matter what. She walked over anyway, got a little closer, called him young master, lowered her head and leaned forward, but didn't get too close. The young master didn't respond. It was not good for him to sleep like this, but she couldn't help him. She thought about getting a quilt, went to the young master's room upstairs, opened the door, and found a clean quilt to come down. She didn't know that after she left, Fu Zheng opened his eyes and looked upstairs. When Qinji came down, he closed his eyes again. She held the quilt, walked in front of him, took a slow look at it, stepped forward and draped it over him. She moved quickly, as if she was not afraid of anything, and just covered him up. Master. That was all she called out. Fu Zheng seemed unaware. Qinji pulled the quilt for the young master again, bent down, stood up and was about to leave, but a hand, a slender and strong hand with distinct joints grabbed her and pulled her tight. Auntie Qin is going to leave like this, whispering voices sounded at the same time. Young master. Qinji's face changed. She looked at the young master. The young master was not asleep. He was lying to her. But why? She looked over and saw that her hand was held and grasped tightly. She met his gaze and he looked at her. Fu Zheng held Qinma's hand, moved it, rubbed it a few times and it was still so thin. He hadn't held it for a long time. He couldn't help but look at the face in front of him, Qinma's face. Just leave like this. Master, since you are awake, go up and rest. Qin. She just pulled her hands away. She didn't want to be like this. She felt her hands itchy, her heart was beating, and there was another feeling. She didn't want to say more, and didn't want to go on. She wanted to turn around. Of course Fu Zheng did not move. He exerted force with his hands, and his shirt collar was already torn open with his elegance, gentleness, wildness and sexiness. Qinji fell down again. She panicked again and fell on him. Master, Fu Zheng. She called out, calling his name. She was angry. Your name. Fu Zheng smelled the feminine scent on her body, and then he embraced her in his arms through the quilt. Hold her tightly. Feeling the impact and everything she brought to him, her fragrance and falling hair were more fragrant than before. He took a deep sniff and hugged her tighter. He still thought of her from time to time these days, thinking about her body and fragrance. He thought she was old enough, so he found another woman, no matter how beautiful she was, thinking it would be nice to have her by his side, but... What should I do? Qinji fell down and wanted to get up as soon as possible, no matter what he said about not moving. There was a quilt in the middle, but she didn't move and he hugged her whole body. He held her in his arms, so tightly that she could not move. She struggled and shouted, Master, what are you thinking about? Let me go, let go. Master, are you still drunk? Look at me carefully. Moving again. Fu Zheng said at this time, holding her hand tightly, hugging her and kissing her face, smiling gently and elegantly, and kissing her lips little by little, kissing her, not like he usually does. He kissed her for a long time and continued to kiss her. Qinji felt something, a woman's intuition, even though she was not young anymore. Fu Zheng also changed his hand position. Qinji, master, do you know what you are doing? She resisted desperately. Fu Zheng just wouldn't let go, just like that, he moved his hand and smiled. Kinji couldn't scream, he was too crazy. She regretted in her heart that she should have resigned and left earlier. She shouldn't have stayed, for real this time. Fu Zheng came later. Kinji uttered a cry of pain, so old and still afraid. She was not afraid. Finally, Kinji sorted out her clothes, hugged the quilt, and retreated to a safe place, but no place was safe. Fu Zheng pulled her, then pulled her over. He looked up at her, elegant, gentle, yet wild. Sexy, with a raised corner of his mouth, a gentleman, he whispered. Kinji wanted to say why. Fu Zheng lowered his head and said, "You are mine, do you want me to kiss you?" He even smiled. "You are not drunk." Kinji said this, "I don't know what you are thinking, young master." She stepped back. "What are you thinking about?" Fu Zheng didn't say anything. He didn't want to admit that he was not drunk. He was not drunk, and she was not drunk either. "I am drunk." He looked at her. Kinji knew that he was not drunk, so she turned around, covered herself and jumped down. Fu Zheng looked at her. "You can't run away." After Kinji heard this, she stopped walking. She couldn't run. Where could she run to? She couldn't escape. How could she escape? But she could resign. She turned back to Fu Zheng and said, "I don't know why you are looking for me. I am old enough to be your mother. The world is big. I know the world is big, but I can't escape it." Fu Zheng didn't know either. "I don't know either. The scent on your body, the scent of a woman, is you, Aunt Kin." He bit the last two words hard, as if he didn't care. He stared at her. Chapter 15. I thought you figured it out. If it's not the same scent as yours, the kind of feminine scent that fascinates him, he won't be interested. To make him like it, if you hadn't appeared in front of me, was it intentional? Master. Kinji looked at him. She smelled so good. And she was wrong. She did it on purpose. If she didn't mean to do it, could she do it on purpose? He was crazy. "Don't want to follow me?" Fu Zheng asked her. Kinji wanted to say, "Fu Zheng, you are not sick. What age am I? You are crazy." He is the male lead with him. He just wants to have some fun. Fu Zheng didn't say anything. "I can be your aunt." Kinji didn't say. Kinji couldn't leave, and her lady didn't agree. She couldn't find her lady for the time being. The housekeeper said that her lady had gone abroad, and she went to ask the housekeeper. Madam didn't say when she would be back. It might take a few days. The housekeeper said he would be back in a few days. "Why are you looking for Madam?" Kinji didn't say anything. "You've been looking for someone lately?" The housekeeper added, asking what was the matter. No. Kinji did not fight again. If she fought again, she would have to see the person, or she would just leave. She knew she could not beat Fu Zheng. He didn't stop her from leaving, nor did he have anyone lock her up. She wasn't worth him doing this, but if she left, he probably won't look for her again. He won't look for her again. She is nothing but thinking about him. She didn't go out because she was afraid of having an accident. Her body was still there, and she didn't know when she would go out and have an accident. She has also been looking for a job these days, and she has seen some jobs on her mobile phone. It's okay, also working on the same thing. She had to raise her son and leave money for him, so she needed to work. Jobs are changeable. Even for her own death, she had bought insurance, and she had bought it a long time ago. If she hadn't died here, she wouldn't be so helpless. Fortunately, no one knows. The young master came back and was the same as usual, as if he was no longer busy. He called Kinma and asked her to cook whatever he wanted to eat. But I didn't help him anymore. Fu Zheng was also looking at her, his eyes fixed on her. No one knew what he was looking at. It seemed that nothing was wrong. She turned around and he was still looking at her, as if he wanted to see something. Kinji hoped that he would look at her more, see that she was not young anymore, much older than he was, and put away that thought, but his gaze still made her feel uncomfortable. Like this. She looked over and he asked her what she thought of him. Gentle and elegant. Think it through. What did you figure out? Kinji thought. Master. Kinji asked him to eat. She didn't want to spend time with him anymore. He also ate. After he finished, he asked her to help. She refused. He said, "Do you want me to come over and hug you?" Kinji looked at him and could only help him. Fu Zheng smelled the feminine scent on her and finished his meal happily, but did not leave. Kinji wanted to pack up and have a rest without seeing him. Didn't expect this time. Fu Zheng grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. Kinji suddenly called out, "Young master," lowered her voice and looked outside the door. "What are you looking at?" Fu Zheng asked her what she was looking at, looked at her and kissed her. His gentle face became more sexy and wild. He hugged her tightly and inhaled the fragrance from her body. Qinji was still struggling. I thought you had thought it through, Fu Zheng said, still lowering his head. Even if a woman gets older, her skin is still good. Even though she's not wearing any makeup, she still looks the same. He was still interested. Still thinking about it. How could Qinji have thought it through? Of course she hadn't thought it through. How could she have thought of being with him? No, master, Fu Zheng, don't do this. Calling my name again. Fu Zheng said to her and said again, little by little, he hugged her tightly with both hands. Qinji couldn't stand it, it was itchy and there was something else. She pushed him away. Fu Zheng asked her if she really wanted to push her away. Or was she just pretending? He hugged her and asked in her ear, have you thought it through? Master, what do you think of me? Qinji asked again. Fu Zheng lowered his head and kissed her, kissing her, unlike her age, I told you, it was you who made me interested. Fu Zheng. Qinji called again and pushed him. Fu Zheng said with a gentle and wild smile, and gently touched her head with his slender, strong and bony hands, I said you can't escape, no matter how you try. Qinji still asked him to let her go. They shouldn't do this. She had smelled the fragrance on her body but didn't detect it. Only I can smell it. Fu Zheng also found it incredible. The scent of an old woman suited his taste and he was fascinated by it. He kissed her hard. She, with force. Qinji was weak, very weak, unable to struggle and could not struggle. Fu Zheng thought about it again and changed the position of his hands, supporting the back of her head and letting her sit down. Qinji didn't want this to happen. It was awkward. She was not a little girl. I've felt his thoughts before. Qinji, master. Fu Zheng asked her what her name was. He was here and just wanted to hug her tightly and then hold her together. But Qinji didn't want to do that. She turned her head away and pushed hard. You. Fu Zheng still didn't do it again, really. Qinji kept struggling, and seeing that he seemed to no longer be holding her, she left, tidied herself up, and looked at the untied dishes and Fu Zheng on the side. Fu Zheng looked at her and smiled. Qinji turned around and wanted to leave. Fu Zheng discovered that Qin's mother was an honest woman. Qinji returned to her room, and after staying there for a while, she knew that she could not stay here any longer. She picked up her suitcase and started packing it. There was no movement outside. After a while, she heard footsteps. She didn't know what they were, but no one was looking for her, and no one came over. She went out and didn't see Fu Zheng. After putting away the things that had not been put away and they were out of sight, she returned to her room again, packed up her things and sat down. Holding the phone, Fu Zheng hasn't looked for Miss Lu recently. She did look for it, and she saw it, but she didn't want to look at it or care about it anymore. She also wanted to leave at this time. After thinking about it, she found her son's number. Chapter 16 Leaving. She went to the bathroom and washed herself thoroughly. After that, she came out to change her clothes and took a nap, but didn't fall asleep. Went to bed very late. When she got up in the morning, just as the sky was getting light, she quietly went downstairs with her suitcase and at the same time sent a text message to the housekeeper, saying that she had resigned, that she had something to do at home, and she had to go back. She was very careful and found a taxi and a hotel to stay in. The journey was safe and nothing happened, so she breathed a sigh of relief. She thought about saying goodbye to her son, but in the end she didn't and just rested first. The hotel was small and not a well-known one, so she lay down, thinking about finding a job. When she woke up from a nap, she saw many calls from her housekeeper on her phone, some of which asked her why she resigned and left without saying goodbye. Signed a contract. She just wished she wasn't dead. The master is looking for you. Qinji held the phone and looked at the words, young master. He was looking for her and he knew about it. She also saw the unfamiliar number. Who is it? The housekeeper found it when he got up in the morning, packed up and went to work. When he saw Qinma's message, he thought something had happened. I know it's not good after reading it. How could Qin's mother be so irresponsible? Seeing that Qin's mother said that there was an emergency at home, very urgent, she had to go back immediately. There was no time to do anything, so she could only resign, tell him, and then tell his wife. She didn't want to do this either. Looking at him, he felt sympathy for her and wanted to ask. Qin's mother didn't answer the phone. He called several times, but the answer was no. He didn't know what was going on, maybe she didn't have time to answer. I can't get through later. Kinma's departure was no small matter. The madam was not in the country. The young master called him and asked him to find Kinma, and then he told the young master. The young master knows. After asking him clearly, the young master seemed unhappy. Fu Zheng had something to do, so he left. He didn't expect that Kinma, that old woman, would dare to run away. He also said that she was honest and obedient, hard-working and simple. He said she couldn't escape. He just made a phone call and asked someone to check and find it. Second Master Fu is so anxious. Found it. Fu Zheng only said these few words. Okay, Mr. Fu, wait for me. After Fu Zheng hung up the phone, he didn't make any calls, but just did what he had to do. Qinji finally put down her phone and ordered a takeaway. Not long after, the takeaway was delivered. She took a bowl of noodles. Not expensive and tastes good. After she used it, she still wanted to cook for herself to save money. She was thinking about what to do next. There was no rush for work. In the book, she didn't leave. Maybe it was a good thing that she left. As long as she was more careful, even if something happened, she would not die at the hands of the male protagonist Fu Zheng. My son won't look for him either. Not necessarily. She was still afraid that her son would have a conflict with the male protagonist. That was what she was worried about. And Fu Zheng was looking for her. Maybe it was better this way now. Maybe she would be okay, maybe she should have been. She flipped through her phone and saw nothing more. It was still the figures of the young master, Miss Lu, and the beautiful young lady who were with them before. It was not very clear, and her cell phone rang. It was Lin Lan who called and said that the man came again, and she called the police again. Miao Miao was impulsive and got hurt again. She was in a hurry and asked if I was free. Qinji asked. She put her luggage down, picked up her bag, and tidied it. She was also worried. If she was going to die, she would die no matter what. She couldn't just stay at home forever. So she picked up her bag and went out to Lin Lan's barber shop. When she got there, the door was closed again. She knocked on it. Lin Lan opened the door and looked at her. She seemed better than last time. Miao Miao was also behind her and called out to her. Come in. Lin Lan said again. Qinji went in and saw that it wasn't too messy inside, but it was still a little messy. Lin Lan said it hadn't been cleaned up yet, so she asked her to take Miao Miao with her. She had an argument with Miao Miao, and Miao Miao stood aside with a bad look on her face. Qinji asked what happened. Miao Miao didn't say anything. Lin Lan looked at her daughter and said, I thought if it really doesn't work, I'll go and get the money first. Do you think money is so good? Miao Miao said from the side. Qinji also felt that she had more to say. The main thing is that I feel that every time it happens, the woman is infertile and wants a child, but the man seems unable to have one either, said Lin Lan. She knew very well that money was not so easy to get. I don't want it anyway. Lin Miao Miao also said something. Yuan's face looked unhappy and a little gloomy. The mother and daughter looked at each other again. Qinji said, don't do this anymore, Lin Lan. Miao Miao is right, Lin Lan, your idea is not wrong either. She said to the mother and daughter, to them. Lin Lan's idea was correct. She thought about it again and again, and Miao Miao didn't accept it. She looked at them and told them to discuss it properly and not to be anxious. Lin Lan didn't want to either. I don't want to either. Lin Miao Miao, Aunt Qin, me too. Qinji also saw that Miao Miao's hand had turned purple again and was a little swollen, probably because of the fight. Lin Lan was better, as her leg was slightly sprained, but nothing else happened, so she sat down. Qinji asked her to go and see it together, along with Miao Miao. Lin Lan still didn't want to go. She said she just stepped away for a while and just needed to take a rest. She would let Miao Miao go instead of bothering her again. Lin Miao Miao, go if you want to. Qinji looked at the mother and daughter and stopped trying to persuade them. She took Miao Miao with her and went to a familiar pharmacy. She asked for and got the medicine. The clerk asked, what's the matter? Qinji didn't say anything, and neither did Lin Miao Miao. You still have to be careful. The clerk asked again with concern. I will. Qinji said, and Miao Miao nodded. After finding a chair to sit down, Qinji applied the medicine to her. Lin Miao Miao lowered her head and said, thank you, Aunt Qin. It's always the same. She asked Mom not to call you, but she would. It's okay. Qinji said with a smile. Aunt Qin, you are so nice and beautiful. Lin Miao Miao suddenly said. Aunt Kin must have been elegant and refined in the past, and she is a little bit like that now. Kinji didn't expect her to say that and laughed. Is she pretty? Thinking about Mr. Fu. Aunt Kin, you know some behaviors on campus that some people just don't like. Lin Miao Miao suddenly said. Kinji looked up, not knowing what she meant, and wanted to ask. Lin Miao Miao didn't know what she was thinking about and didn't mention it again. It doesn't matter if Aunt Kin doesn't know. She stood up and was about to leave. Miao Miao, what happened? You can tell Aunt Kin if there is anything. Is someone bullying you? Kinji pulled her and wanted to ask her something, looking at her with concern. Lin Miao Miao turned around and said nothing to her, just shook her head. Kinji felt something was wrong and her cell phone rang. She heard it and Lin Miao Miao also heard it and called out Auntie Kin. Kinji didn't want to look at her cell phone. She took it out anyway and saw that it was an unfamiliar number, so she didn't want to answer it. Aunt Kin, why don't you answer your call? Lin Miao Miao looked over and asked. Kinji said she didn't know the person, so she hung up, but the phone rang again. There was something on Lin Miao Miao's round face. Chapter 17 found. Kinji picked up the phone. Where are you? The man's voice sounded familiar. Kinji didn't answer. Fu Zheng's voice, want to escape? Kinji didn't want to talk to him anymore. She was about to put down her phone. Fu Zheng, you want me to come to you? Kinji wanted to ask why you were looking for me. Fu Zheng, I told you that you can't escape, did you forget? Unless he doesn't want it anymore. Kinji didn't want to talk to him, so she hung up the phone. She faintly heard something, but she ignored it. Miao Miao kept looking at her. Aunt Kin. Lin Miao Miao asked, what's the matter? Aunt Kin. Kinji told her that it was nothing, just a call from someone she knew. However, Lin Miao Miao still felt that something was wrong. She was a little depressed and something could be seen on her round face. Kinji asked her and she shook her head. Kinji was wondering if there was something wrong, so she asked Lin Lan. Lin Lan asked if Miao Miao was bullied at school. She knew something about it, from the internet. They went back together. When she saw Lan, she wanted to ask what Lin Lan had seen, and asked Miao Miao to go in and rest. Lin Miao Miao looked at Aunt Kin and went in anyway. Kinji told Lin Lan what Miao Miao said. Lin Lan frowned when she heard it, this is. She also knew it, she had seen it, and knew the situation. She said she would ask about it. Kinji was worried. Lin Lan just took it to heart. They had dinner together. She cooked all her favorite dishes, including stir-fried flowers and plants, braised fish, and a big pot of spicy fish. Lin Lan and Kinji were from the same province and had similar tastes. Kinji stayed to help because his skills were good and they used it together. Fu family. Lin Lan asked again, and Lin Miao Miao was also listening. Kinji told her that they might have to move to another place. When Lin Miao Miao heard this, she thought, Aunt Kin is no longer at the Fu family. The Fu family is not bad, and she thought of Kinzi. Lin Lan asked directly, what's the matter? Is it a rich man? No. Kinji didn't say what was wrong with Fu Zheng, she just said she wanted to find another one. Lin Lan looked at her and wanted to ask more questions. Lin Miao Miao was also worried about Aunt Kin. Kinji said she hadn't thought about it yet. Lin Lan said that if she hadn't made up her mind, she could just come here if she had nowhere to go. They were friends and Kinji was thinking of introducing her to the Fu family, so she smiled and agreed. After dinner, Kinji was about to leave. Lin Lan saw her off, and Lin Miao Miao went with her. Lin Lan's leg felt much better, and Kinji told Miao Miao to listen to her mother. Your mother is just angry. She touched. Miao Miao nodded, then turned her head away. Lin Lan didn't say anything. Kinji went back, took a taxi and returned to the hotel. Lin Lan felt that there was something wrong with Kinji. Lin Miao Miao noticed something. Fu Zheng received the news. He called that woman not long ago, but she hung up after a few words. Now he knew where she was. After he finished listening, something changed on his elegant and gentle face. He smiled and said thank you, put down the phone and stopped smiling. His slender, strong, bony hands turned the pen at hand. When he was almost done and the time was up, he took his people out, got into a black Maybach, and then the car started and went in one direction. We soon arrived at the place. The second young master has arrived. This is it. After hearing what was said, Fu Zheng looked out and saw the hotel on the side. Is this also a hotel? He had never seen anything like this before. Then he asked someone to go down and look for someone. The driver took everyone down. Fu Zheng just stared at the door, took out his cell phone, looked at it, put on one side of his gold-rimmed glasses and made another call. Inside the hotel, Qinji packed up everything she had used and was going to look for a job when she suddenly heard the door open and someone was outside. She asked who it was, but no one answered. She asked again and was told it was a hotel staff. She looked outside and saw it was a hotel staff. She opened the door and saw the people outside were Fu Zheng's driver and another person. She regretted opening the door, and it was too late to close it. "The master is waiting for you." The driver looked over and said, but no one else said anything. Qinji wanted to say that she resigned. "Auntie Qin," the driver called again. Qinji knew she couldn't hide anymore. She didn't want to go out, and the people outside didn't leave either. The driver received a call, and she heard why he hadn't come out yet. It was Fu Zheng's voice, slow and leisurely. One could imagine his gentle face and soft smile. After the driver finished speaking, he looked at her and said, "Mother Qin, think about your son." Qinji thought of Zia, so she closed the door and went out with the driver. Someone in the hotel looked over at her, so she looked ahead, wanting to go faster so that too many people wouldn't see her. The driver and he went outside. The Maybach was parked with the door open. The young master was sitting inside, looking at his laptop and typing a few words on his phone. The driver called out "Mother Qin" again. Qinji went up. Fu Zheng didn't look at her. He finished typing, said a few words, closed the car door, and the Maybach started moving. "Qinji, master. Her things are still in the hotel." Fu Zheng ignored her, just glanced at her, let the driver keep busy with the laptop, smiled gently and said a few words. Qinji stopped talking and waited until the car stopped. Back to the apartment. The car door opened and the driver stood outside. Qinji got out even though she didn't want to. "Master," the driver called again. Fu Zheng also closed his computer and came down. They went upstairs together and got into the apartment. The driver and others went downstairs. The housekeeper saw Qin Ma and called out. Qinji responded and called out. Fu Zheng smiled and asked the housekeeper to go down, and Qin's mother came back. The housekeeper wanted to ask but didn't go down. Why did Qin Ma come back again, and still with the young master, and there were some others? He didn't think much about it. Qin Ma could come to them if she had any difficulties. The door was not closed yet. Fu Zheng looked over and saw Qinji just called him young master. Fu Zheng closed the door. The door was closed, but it was not Qinji who closed it. Fu Zheng closed the door himself. With a bang, the door closed and he walked over and approached her. Qinji looked at him and called out Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng put his laptop aside, took off his suit, pulled his tie with one hand, and then unbuttoned his shirt, first his hands and then his collar. He pulled them. The face behind the gold-rimmed glasses looked cold, calm, and elegant. Qinji called him young master. Fu Zheng took off his glasses, no longer a gentleman, but more gentle. He smiled gently and asked her where she wanted to run to. Could she escape? He pulled her over, turned around, pressed her against the wall, and kissed her directly. Qinji resisted. "Master, Fu Zheng, why is this happening again?" Suddenly, "Master." She couldn't make a sound. "You still have the strength to shout." Fu Zheng knew that he had some thoughts. He had thought about it on the way and kissed her. After he kissed her, he looked at her. What she was wearing was getting uglier and uglier. Qinji felt his movements. Chapter 18. She can't hide. He pulled it and looked at her face again. "Honest." "Young master." Qinji still called out, but Fu Zheng just kept kissing her. After kissing her for a long time, Qinji's lips became numb. "I have no strength at all." Fu Zheng held her body and didn't let her squat down. It stayed like that for a long time. Qinji really couldn't scream anymore, but he still didn't leave. He lowered his head and looked down at her. Still running away. "Fu Zheng." Qinji asked why he would not do this and let her go. "What do you mean by letting go or not letting go?" Fu Zheng just thought about it. If he wanted something, he had to get it. She looked like this, and he just liked the feminine scent on her. She had a sweet mouth and she charmed him. "Fu Zheng." Qinji didn't know why he stopped talking, she wanted to know. Fu Zheng wanted to say that it was enough that he didn't dislike you, but you were still running away like this. He looked at her face and said, "You should take care of yourself." But he still didn't look at her. Kissed her lips. Qinji was being held close to him, listening to his heartbeat and what he said. What was she doing, how she looked? He still liked her like this. You are the male lead, she wanted to say. Fu Zheng didn't hear clearly what she said. Qinji didn't say, male protagonist, this is not what is written in the book, everything has changed, I don't know why it is like this, even if I had known it earlier, she wouldn't have known it. Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng was not the kind of person who would force things, so after a while, he bit her. He liked her. Qinji was not used to it, didn't want to move, called him, she wanted to avoid him. He still let go when it was enough. Qinji fixed her hair again. Fu Zheng looked at her and told her not to run again, you know. Qinji looked at his figure, his back. He was the male lead. He went upstairs with his laptop. She stood there for a while, but she hadn't gotten her things back yet. However, just as she was thinking about getting it, someone knocked on the door. Her heart tightened. She touched her lips and looked at herself. When she heard the housekeeper's voice, she went back to the room, looked in the mirror, wiped her face and lips, which were a little swollen again. She lowered her head, walked to the door, opened it, and someone brought her luggage. It was the butler who came in with the luggage, glad that Aunt Qin is back. He smiled. This belongs to Qin Ma. Qinji wanted to speak and said thank you. If you have anything to say, tell me. Don't just resign or something. The steward continued, did Aunt Qin ask the young master for help? Did the young master send someone to find you? No matter what you need, you can tell me. Why did you come back? Qinji didn't know what to say. Is this what the housekeeper thought? If you think so, that's good. This is your suitcase. The butler said again. Qinji pulled the suitcase and thanked the butler again. The butler said that no matter what happened, the family should not worry. Qinji agreed and said she would. The housekeeper asked what happened at home. Qinji said he was injured. So that's it. The butler understood and left. Qinji felt that she had lied and she didn't like it. She pulled her suitcase back to her room and sat down. Not knowing what to do, her lips felt numb. She touched them a few times and then opened the suitcase. Her things were all inside. She had kept them well, otherwise. She took it out and sat down again, not knowing what she was thinking. When Fu Zheng came up, he had another idea. He went into the bathroom and stayed there for a long time before coming out. He was thinking about that woman and everything about her. He missed her fragrance again and wanted to hold her forever. He liked her so much. Finally, he used his long, strong, bony hands to comb her hair, which was wet. He combed his hair messily back and shook his wet hair back, making it look even messier and wilder. He looked in the mirror again. The elegant face in the mirror is gentle and handsome. He looked at himself. Fu Zheng turned and went out, wrapped in a bath towel, went to the cloakroom to get clothes and put them on. Qinji later listened to the noise upstairs, but heard nothing. After resting for a while, she went out and started cooking. There was food. She regretted coming to the Fu family. If only she hadn't come to the Fu family. Only by doing these things did she feel valuable. After she finished, someone came down from above. Fu Zheng came down and heard the noise. He came over to take a look. She looked embarrassed and ugly. Qinji felt it, but didn't look back. She continued to work on it, doing it carefully. With a little sweat on her head, she turned around and took it out. When they got outside, Fu Zheng leaned aside elegantly and looked at her. Just looking at her like this, he would not like her, be interested in her, nor would he do anything. Qinji said to him, let's eat. Yeah, the time has come. Fu Zheng nodded to her and said okay, gently. He went inside and sat down, and Qin Ma took care of him. Fu Zheng let her take care of him, smelling the fragrance on her body, and finished. Qinji stepped aside. Fu Zheng asked her to eat over there together, but Qinji didn't want to. She wanted to eat alone, just by herself. She looked over. Fu Zheng looked at her and told her to use it here. Qinji knew that it was useless to object, so she sat down alone and started eating. She looked honest and obedient, and the housekeeper and others had also said so. Qinji didn't know what he was looking at. She was eating alone. She prepared delicious dishes for Fu Zheng, which were also his favorites. There was seafood, shrimps, scallops, abalone, sea cucumber, and sashimi, all of which were of the best quality. She also had her own cooking skills. She also stir-fried dishes, such as tendons and beef chops, which were also stir-fried and very tasty. With the addition of broccoli and the like, they looked fragrant. Fu Zheng didn't use too much, so there was a lot left. She slowly ran out of it. Fu Zheng laughed and said that she ate a lot and was a good eater. Kinji just ate what she wanted to eat. She wanted to clean up, but Fu Zheng didn't let her do it. He pulled her over, but he didn't use too much force. Master. Fu Zheng pulled her to sit down, put his arms around her, and with his slender, strong, bony hands he grabbed a clean tissue and wiped her lips. He felt a little disgusted. After wiping it clean and seeing that Weixia was satisfied, he bent down and kissed her. His kiss was very light and there was no smell. Let her be cleaner. Chapter 19, Bruise on the Face. He kissed her again and asked her to be clean. Kinji, how to be clean? If he doesn't like it, don't do it. How to be clean? He said her lips, pulling her to kiss again and again. When Kinji had the chance, she said you don't have to kiss her because she is dirty. Fu Zheng looked at her, wiped her hands with his slender, strong, bony hands and kissed her again. Kinji. She can't escape. Everything has turned out like this. Let it be for now. She doesn't know when she will die. There will be no such thing in the book. Everything has changed. Maybe she won't die. Even if she does, she will explain it clearly to her son. The heroine will also appear, and there will be other women. Fu Zheng asked her what she was thinking about. Kinji didn't think about anything. What was she thinking about? Fu Zheng started kissing and moving his hands, just like before, looking like he was going to do something. Even though Kinji had compromised, she still didn't want to do it so quickly. I don't want to have anything to do with him. Fu Zheng wanted to be with her, but his hand was still motionless, so Kinji pushed him away. What to push? Fu Zheng said. Kinji just wanted him to let her go. Fu Zheng looked at her. Even though he hadn't made up his mind yet, he was still unhappy. He kissed her again, and her clothes became wrinkled. He felt satisfied and smelled her before letting her go. He let her go, and Kinji immediately tidied her clothes. Fu Zheng just watched her like that. Kinji was very shy. She didn't want this to happen, so she put away her clothes and went to wash the dishes. She washed them very carefully, one bowl at a time. Fu Zheng sat and watched for a while, then went upstairs to get busy. Looking down, Kinji listened for a while and heard footsteps going upstairs. She calmed down and cleaned up a bit. After she was done, she went back to her room. Fu Zheng was in contact with someone. After some contact, he heard a piece of news, which was nothing. Afterwards, he dealt with the matter again. After finishing the work, I went downstairs to look for Kin's mother, but didn't see her. I went to her door and knocked, and the door opened. Kinji knew that it was probably because she looked at him and called him a young master. Fu Zheng looked at her lips, pulled her over and kissed her. Kinji was pulled over by him and kissed again. His action of kissing her at any time made Fu Zheng want to kiss her. Kiss if you want. After a while, Kinji felt better after he turned her over. He touched her lips, looked at her face, and smelled her womanly scent. She still doesn't look good in it. Kinji doesn't care. Fu Zheng still didn't continue, just leaned against. She felt his emotions. Kinji didn't sleep well that night. He couldn't fall asleep and kept thinking. The next day, Kinji got up early and prepared the meal again. Fu did the same as before. After she finished cooking, before she went to call for help, someone came down from upstairs. Fu Zheng got up again, put on his shirt, came down and saw her, walked to her, looked at her, pulled her over and kissed her, right next to the sink. Fu Zheng, this is the kitchen. Kinji was pulled over all of a sudden and had no time to react. She wanted to say, Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng hugged her and kissed her again for a long time, then said that he was leaving and he also wanted to eat when. Kinji agreed and sent him away. After he left, the housekeeper came in and smiled. She didn't know what to do. In the afternoon and evening, Fu Zheng did not come back, saying that he had something to do and he didn't know who he was with. The next day, the housekeeper said that the lady had returned to the country. Kinji heard that the lady had returned. Kinji also received news from the lady. The lady asked her what was the matter, but she didn't know what to say. Madam asked about Fu Zheng and she told her everything went well. That's fine. The lady didn't say much. Kinji was alone. Fu Zheng didn't come back that night either. She wished Fu Zheng would never come back so that she could be alone forever. It would be so nice to be alone. She watched TV and looked at her phone. When the housekeeper was free, he looked at her and asked her how things were at home. At home? Kinji didn't know how to answer. She just said that her family was getting better. The housekeeper seemed very concerned and mentioned that the lady had returned. If the lady could come back earlier, she could tell her. How could Kinji tell his wife? I don't think his wife would know. The young master has gone to accompany his wife. The butler said again. Kinji then realized who Fu Zheng had gone with and what happened. She wanted to ask when the young master would be back, but the housekeeper just kept talking. The young master may not know when he will come again, but it's a good thing, said the butler. Kinji also thought it was a good thing. Madam is back and has bought some things. Miss Lu is also there. The housekeeper said with a smile, isn't it a good thing? Kinji, yes. We will take care of him when the young master comes. The housekeeper said the last sentence and looked at Kinma, who could pay more attention to the family. The Fu family is very good. Kinji thought that she hadn't seen any news about Fu Zheng on her phone until a few days later when she saw it together with Miss Lu. The two of them smiled and Miss Lu took his arm and leaned against him. The next day, she called Lin Lan. She was worried about Miao Miao and asked about it. Lin Lan answered her call and said she was just about to call her. How is it? Kinji asked. Lin Lan said that she had asked Miao Miao, but the girl refused to say who it was at school, but she just wouldn't say. She was worried about Miao Miao and asked about it. It didn't seem like she was the one. She also asked around but didn't hear anything. Thank you for telling me about this. It's okay, I just thought too much. She described Miao Miao's demeanor when she spoke. Only then did Kinji feel relieved. Lin Lan said she would continue to keep an eye on it and thought nothing would happen. When asked how she was, Kinji said she had returned to the Fu family and was still at the Fu family. Lin Lan wanted to ask her. Kinji also knew what Lin Lan wanted to ask, so she said okay, it was nothing, and she would come to her if there was anything. Lin Lan told her to remember that they were friends, best friends, and she should call her if she had any problems. Kinji smiled and nodded, I'll remember it. Lin Lan asked about Ziya again. Kinji also called to check on her son and sent a message. Her son replied quickly. She also asked her son Miao Miao if anything was wrong. After a while, my son came back and said nothing happened. The middle-aged man on her phone was still looking for her, and her family asked her how she was, but she didn't answer the phone. Her parents were worried, so she replied that she was doing fine. She wanted to find time to go see her son again. When she went, her son came out with a little bruises on his face. She looked at him and wanted to see him again. Mom is fine. Kinji said, don't open your mouth. Are you really okay? Kinji asked her son, pressing her hand on his forehead. Kinji said that he accidentally bumped into it during physical education class. Chapter 20 Engagement. Kinji asked if it hurt and wanted to take her to see a doctor. Kinji said that there was no need to do that and he had bought some medicine. She had no choice but to stop asking, but she still looked at him from time to time. Boys will still get hurt occasionally, so she told him to be careful and not to be like that. It broke her heart to see that. Her son is the one she loves best and he looks a little green. Well. Kinji also knew his mother's worries and he didn't want to do that either. You have to apply the medicine on time. What kind of medicine is it? Kinji said. Kinji knew. Kinji, why is Mom here again? Kinji still gave him the food and told her son how powerful the Fu family was. She didn't know how to tell her son not to go against the Fu family and Fu Zheng. Kinji didn't know what his mother was going to say, so he looked at her. Kinji said that she wanted him to grow up well and graduate well, and that if anything happened to her, she would not blame others and he should be fine. Mom. Kinji frowned, with worry on his childish face. Kinji didn't say anything else and told her son about the food she had brought. Kinji looked at her without saying anything. After a while, he thanked his mother and said, Mom, you don't have to be like this. Kinji stayed with him and talked for a while before going back. She wanted to go to school, but Kinji said, Mom, let's do it next time, as there are too many people in the dormitory today. Kinji did not return to the apartment. Not long after, her cell phone rang. She picked it up and saw it was Fu Zheng. She answered the phone, where is he? Kinji said she was outside. Fu Zheng asked her where she was and Kinji answered casually. As for Fu Zheng, his family asked him to get engaged. His eldest brother was already engaged to Lu Qingqing, but he didn't want to. No matter what he was thinking, that was what his family wanted. He reached into his trouser pocket and took out a lighter with his slender, strong, and beautiful hands. He turned it a few times, playing with it in his hand, and looked outside. He was not in a good mood. He was thinking about someone, the woman in the apartment, the old woman, Qin's mother. He thought to himself, turned the lighter with his hand again, and took out a cigarette. It was not iced coffee, as he didn't bring any with him. He gently picked one out with his index finger. After putting it to his lips and lightly lighting it, he took out his cell phone and swiped it across, then called Qin's mother and found out that she was not in the apartment, but outside. He raised his eyebrows and asked, wanting to know clearly, why was she not at home? What did she run out for? Did she want to run away? She wanted to escape. An old woman actually ran away once. He lowered his head and took another puff of his cigarette. Who could have thought of a good death? No one knew. He had thought about whether she did it on purpose. It was good that someone liked her. What did she have? Not wanting money, was he not good? She was still old. He raised the corner of his mouth, took another puff of the cigarette, looked inside, and thought about things. The other party still didn't reply to him, so he asked again and asked her to wait for him while he went back. I don't want to go back. What? Fu Zheng asked. He was about to say something else when someone came out. He saw it was Qingqing and put down his phone. Second brother Fu. Lu Qingqing came over and looked at brother Fu. She just stared at him and raised her head slightly. She wanted to call him brother Fu. She looked at brother Fu's cigarette. Brother Fu is smoking and is in a bad mood. Do you want to get engaged? Fu Zheng asked her, staring at her, wanting to know, elegant and gentle. Of course Lu Qingqing was thinking about it. How could she not? She had been thinking about it for a long time and waiting for brother Fu. Brother Fu stopped waiting for her after he broke up with her, but she still felt that brother Fu had her in his heart, but it was just that brother Fu didn't want her. They were in love at the beginning and grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Brother Fu was very good to her. They got together after she confessed her love to him, and their relationship was good later. They loved each other, but brother Fu gradually became a little cold, so she proposed a breakup. She just wanted to give it a try and see if brother Fu still thought about her. She also knew that the Fu family liked her, and her uncle and aunt loved her very much and were very satisfied with her and wanted her to be their wife. She can be said to be spoiled. Her family members pamper her and nothing has ever made her unhappy since she was a child. Only brother Fu would be hers, but brother Fu agreed. She was very painful after they separated, thinking that brother Fu was waiting for her. Little did she know that second brother Fu had a new girlfriend, and he was in love with her so much that she found many opportunities to see her, which made her very angry. Later, she asked second brother Fu about it. Brother Fu said that he had someone he liked, and that woman was also unusual. She didn't want to think about it. Fortunately, they broke up. Brother Fu must have been sad when he went abroad, but now he's back. It's back to the way it was before, and nothing else matters. What about brother Fu? I want to see what brother Fu thinks. I don't want to. Fu Zheng said very directly. Lu Qingqing's face turned bad. She wanted to ask again, but couldn't. She felt very sad. Fu Zheng said, the past is the past, I don't want to get married for the time being. He didn't say much, still smoking his cigarette and watching his phone hang up. Lu Qingqing also took a look and it turned out that second brother Fu just didn't want to get married or engaged for the time being. That didn't matter. Who did she think he was? She felt a little better. Fu Zheng didn't want to say much, just said that he didn't want to and would say, you are the same, he didn't have it, he was with her before just to take a look, that's how he is. He knew that there were some things that were not said, so he said he was leaving, stood up straight and walked away. Lu Qingqing wanted brother Fu to send her off, so she followed him. Brother Fu had been very close to her before and had even stayed overnight. Fu Zheng didn't want to send her off, but his family said so, so he sent her off anyway. He and she were just trying it out. Lu Qingqing was very happy. They are together. Qinji heard a little bit of what Fu Zheng and Miss Lu said, but not much. There was no sound from the other end, so she went back to her apartment and took a taxi. Before she reached the apartment, she heard a sound behind her. She turned around and saw a black Cullinan driving up and stopping. It was Fu Zheng. He looked over and looked at her, asking her to get in the car. Qinji didn't want to get in, but Fu Zheng looked at her, so she had to get in. When they got in the car, closed the door and the fender in front of the car, he pulled her over and kissed her. Qinji didn't expect him to be like this in the car. She wanted to struggle and asked him to let her go, not to do this anymore, not in the car. Her body was held in Fu Zheng's arms because of her struggle. He moved his hands and smelled the feminine scent on her body. He kissed her for a long time and held her tightly. Mother Qin. Qinji didn't know what to call her, and Fu Zheng didn't know what he was thinking. He hugged her and pressed against her again. Someone will see it and know. Qinji didn't want anyone to know about their relationship. Fu Zheng just hugged her. Qinji said someone would know. If you know, you know. Fu Zheng didn't care. Qinji didn't want to think about it, and Fu Zheng looked at her. They arrived and the car had already driven into the underground garage. She got out of the car and Fu Zheng got in with her. After returning to the apartment and closing the door, Qinji was pushed aside by Fu Zheng and kissed. He kissed her hard. Chapter 21 is here. Qinji came back to her senses. Fu Zheng, master, you come again. He kissed her like this again, too hard, and it didn't match his appearance. Fu Zheng just wanted to kiss her. He wanted to hug her tightly and hold her close to the body he loved. He wanted to do this. Qinji called him. Fu Zheng didn't say anything, but kissed her, making it impossible for her to think. He took away her breath, everything she had. He also pinched the back of her neck, caressed it, and then held her tightly with his slender fingers, pressing her towards him for a long time. He slowed down and kissed her gently. She liked it this way. Qinji slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Fu Zheng still didn't leave and bit her again. Qinji thought that this couldn't go on, as she would get swollen and unable to speak. Fu Zheng looked at her, stared at her, and kissed her again, still hard and forcefully. This time he did not stop, and he kept kissing her. Qinji knew she couldn't escape. Fu Zheng didn't want to wait any longer, so he moved his hands. Qinji noticed it and wanted to stop him. Before, nothing happened. He had always stopped and withdrew his hand. She was not prepared and might never be prepared. Fu Zheng kissed her. Qinji heard that she was about to say something. Fu Zheng called her and hugged her. Qinji didn't want to do it anymore. But Fu Zheng didn't listen to her. Don't like it. Really don't like it. He didn't give her any room to resist. He just didn't really think about it before. He continued in Qinji's ear. Fu Zheng said that he didn't expect that he liked her more than he thought. She was extremely fragrant and didn't look like an old woman in any aspect. Then went to the bathroom. Fu Zheng held her in his room. He held her in his arms. Once again, he did not let her go. After a long time, Qinji woke up. Looking at the man in front of her, Fu Zheng, she got up carefully, left, went downstairs, and went back to her room. She took a shower again and lay on the bed, thinking about what happened. She couldn't sleep, and she didn't know why. She wanted to check her phone, but it didn't work. She was not asleep, her body was still covered with the things Fu Zheng had given her. When Fu Zheng woke up, he found that Qinma was gone, and he didn't know where the woman beside him had gone. He said he wanted to hug her, but when he thought about it, he had no idea where she had gone. He stood there casually. He didn't think much about the old woman. He walked to the cloakroom on the side, picked out some clothes and put them on. I chose something casual, and there seemed to be a hint of feminine scent on her. He found that this woman was more delicious than he thought. Being older also meant having bigger breasts. He touched her jaw again and found a small mark there. It looked like a scar. The slender, strong, bony hand touched it and found only a small scar. It was caused by Qin's mother. Maybe he had gone too far and she couldn't bear it. He was satisfied, not only on his face, but also on other places. He just didn't notice it before. Thinking back to the situation at that time, she didn't look like a woman who had given birth to a child. He changed his clothes and looked in the mirror again. He went to the bathroom to take a shower, wiped his wet hair, changed and went downstairs. He looked at the time. It was a little early. He was in a good mood. Arrived down there. Qinji didn't sleep well and got up early. She also found that there were marks left on her neck. They were obvious at first glance, all red, and looked like something had happened. She tried to wear tighter clothes, but it was difficult to cover her neck, so she tied a scarf. She made breakfast, a simple one, as she wanted to eat a lot. After it was done, she looked at it and wanted to eat it first. She didn't want to hear any sound behind her, so she turned around and saw Fu Zheng. He was wearing casual sportswear, which made him look younger, more handsome, elegant and handsome. And gentle and kind. Fu Zheng walked up to her, hugged her and looked at her. She didn't look as good today as she did yesterday. She was pretty good yesterday. He stepped forward and kissed her. Qinji felt it and wanted to turn around and called Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng said that she looked okay yesterday, but not today. He still kissed her for a long time and she smelled good. Qinji wanted to push away, as she was afraid of what he might do in the morning. Fortunately, he didn't. He let her go and looked at the breakfast she had prepared. Qinji told him that it was almost ready. Fu Zheng said it was good. Qinji brought it to the dining room. Fu Zheng said he wanted to do some exercise. There was a special exercise room in the living room. He went there for a while. Qinji continued to cook. She took a break and was about to call Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng came out, covered in sweat. He went upstairs to wash and change his clothes before coming down again. After she was done, she would serve it to him and he would help serve it, and then he would sit down and use it, letting her use it together. Qinji doesn't need it. Fu Zheng asked her to sit down and Qinji had to have breakfast with him. He also picked up some food for her and asked her to eat it, saying that she liked the taste. Qinji used it. She used a lot and used it all up. She knew she used a lot, so she went to wash the dishes. Fu Zheng pulled her behind him and kissed Qinji again soon after. The kiss was very quick. He pulled her to sit down and kissed her. Qinji looked at him. Looking at the enlarged face in front of her, which looked more dangerous and more beautiful, she did not open her mouth. Fu Zheng asked her why she didn't open it, closed it. He whispered and kissed her anyway. Qinji didn't want to, but Fu Zheng moved his hand and kissed her anyway. After that, he kissed her and touched her face, then went out. Qinji washed the dishes alone. She was still very slow. After washing them one by one, she washed her hands. When she was done, she looked at her phone again, but did not open it. The butler brought the food over and saw her and smiled. She said a few words to the butler, but the butler didn't say much and left. She stayed like this until noon, and then she looked into finding a job, as she definitely needed one. She also looked at her money, which was a total of 60,000 yuan. Save a little more. It was almost noon, and she was thinking about what to eat when her cell phone rang. She ignored it, but after a while she saw that it was a message from Fu Zheng. Chapter 22. She didn't go. She clicked on it and saw that it asked her to prepare the meal and send it to a place, but she didn't want to go. I still don't want anyone to find out. Qinji had prepared lunch, but she didn't reply to his message. Soon her cell phone rang. It was him calling her and she had to answer it. Hello. Didn't you see the message I sent, Aunt Qin? There seemed to be someone next to Fu Zheng, asking as he spoke. No. Qinji of course pretended not to see it. Fu Zheng directly asked her to finish it and send it over, saying that he would send someone to pick her up. She still didn't reply to him, but just said well, and he seemed to be in a good mood. She just waited until people came outside and the housekeeper notified her, then she gave the prepared food to the housekeeper and had someone deliver it. The butler didn't think much about it and took it away. He only knew that the young master had sent someone. He smiled and said, "Let's go." Qinji saw him off. I don't know what happened. She slept with him last night. She closed her eyes later but didn't fall asleep at all. Fortunately, it couldn't be seen on her face. She didn't dream anything, but later she had a dream about when she was pregnant with her son. She was still young at that time and she met a man whom she liked very much because he was handsome, had a good temperament, was good to her, and had money. She didn't know him very well, and then he disappeared. She liked him very much, and he was mature, too, at that time, and not much older than her. At that time, I felt that she was not an ordinary person. I just fell in love with her at first sight. He also liked her, so we were together. Who knew that he would disappear? At that time she was pregnant with her son. Her son still looked like him, a little bit. He was different from her and Fu Zheng. She woke up and opened her eyes. On the other side, Fu Zheng waited for someone to come. When he heard someone coming, he asked and let them in. However, after seeing the person, he did not see the person he wanted to see. The woman did not come. It was the person he sent who came in with a food box. Fu Zheng looked at him. Sir. The driver called and put the lunch box in front of the young master. Fu Zheng looked at the driver and the lunch box, asked about it, and found out that after he went there, he met the housekeeper, who brought the food down. He knew it, so he smiled and let him go. The driver got off. Fu Zheng looked at the lunch box, opened it and took a look, but did not eat it. After a while, someone brought in the food again and set it out, and then he got up. He wanted to see her, kiss her. Down. Not long after, someone else came to see him. Xiao Yu came over, knocked on the door, and after entering, he looked at him and said with a click of the tongue, "Did you have dinner with Mr. Fu?" "I wanted to come and have dinner with you." Fu Zheng sat down and asked him directly what he wanted to eat. Xiao Yu walked over and sat down, looking at the delicious food. He also saw a box of something. He thought he brought it with him. Why were there 2 portions? He also asked. Are these 2 servings? He looked at it again. One was obviously ordered and delivered by someone, and the other was also ordered, but it looked like a home-cooked dish. Where did this come from? He squinted his peach blossom eyes and smiled. Something's going on. Which beauty is it? Is it Miss Lu? No, is it Juning? Neither look alike. Fu Zheng didn't want to talk to him, so he just asked him if he wanted to eat and then eat together. If he didn't want to, then. Now that we have it, let's eat it here. Which beautiful lady really gave this to you? Xiao Yu asked again with a smile and also picked up the bowl and chopsticks. This looks delicious, try it. Fu Zheng said he couldn't stop talking. Xiao Yu said that he couldn't stop it, there must be something. You know, he also said that he heard you were getting engaged and didn't miss someone anymore. Fu Zheng's face didn't look very good. Xiao Yu said no more. Lu Qingqing was a good person and she only cared about the man in front of her. Unfortunately, the man in front of her had no idea. He said that he knew him and would not get engaged for anyone else. This food is delicious. Who sent it? He became serious. Fu Zheng looked at the food, but he didn't eat it. You don't want to eat? Xiao Yu also discovered it. He said he came to eat, but Fu Zheng didn't want to eat. The person who sent the food must not be one he likes, and it was the woman he liked. Was it for money? Fu Zheng mentioned the company's affairs. Xiao Yu also talked about it. After they talked about the person the enemy wanted to rob, Xiao Yu mentioned Ju Qin, but he still didn't come out. Still thinking about it. Fu Zheng also wanted to say something. Xiao Yu shook his head and asked if they wanted to go out and play in the evening. Fu Zheng. Qinji slept for a while afterwards, just thinking about things in her mind. She packed up and went out. She hadn't had lunch yet and couldn't eat. She reheated the food and had lunch alone. The food was still delicious after being reheated. It was her favorite. After that, she didn't know whether Fu Zheng would be angry, and she didn't want to know. She was in a bad mood and recalled the man from the past. She cleans and sweeps. My own room, killing time. After cleaning everything, she looked at everything and felt a sense of accomplishment. This was all she knew. Then she looked at herself and was covered in sweat. Her mood improved and she went to the bathroom, took another bath, soaked it thoroughly, and washed herself clean. The red marks on her body had disappeared. Just like last night passed, she didn't think about anything else. No one called her on her phone, Fu Zheng didn't call her, and she simply blocked the number of that middle-aged man. She didn't look at the house either. At night, Fu Zheng didn't come back. She was alone. It was late at night. She heard the door knock and went out to open it. She saw the man outside. Fu Zheng was standing alone without anyone's support. He was holding up his suit jacket and looking at her. His eyes were deep and dark, and he looked at her elegantly. Qinji also looked at him. Fu Zheng asked her if she didn't come to help him. Qinji took a step forward, stretched out her hand and supported him. Her hand held his tightly, trembling slightly. She was worried. What was she worried about? Fu Zheng saw her hands and looked at her face. Her face had been washed and she was wearing a nightgown with another layer on top. He couldn't see anything. He had some ideas, Mother Qin. Qinji looked at him. He asked why he didn't come. Qinji didn't answer him. She smelled a little bit of alcohol. Did he drink? She was about to ask him when they walked in together. After the door closed, Fu Zheng grabbed her hand, turned around, and kissed her. Qinji knew it. Fu Zheng kissed her hard, then became gentle again. His breath was on her. He kissed her hard and hugged her, not at all content. Qinji let him do it. After a while, he still didn't stop. She also noticed that he still wanted to do it. She moved a little after the kiss. I miss you. Fu Zheng said this one word. Qinji, are you drunk? She could hear what he was thinking. Fu Zheng hugged her and kissed her again and said what he wanted, saying that he didn't want to see. Chapter 23. Come again, think more. What is she wearing? What is she wearing? Kinji wanted to go in. This is the door. Thinking that he was here, he said he liked it. Fu Zheng was still kissing her, and he kept kissing her even after hearing her voice. She was kissing her lips and she couldn't hear anything else at all, and she did what she wanted. Kinji said to go inside. Fu Zheng was here. He kissed her at the door again, and then they went upstairs together, inside, to his room. Kinji closed his eyes. After taking a bath, Fu Zheng and the others fell asleep together. Kinji was so tired that she couldn't even move her fingers. At her age, she fell asleep without knowing anything. Fu Zheng also fell asleep because he had been drinking. When Kinji woke up in the morning, she found herself there, with her breath and something entangled next to her face. She looked at the man beside her. His face was more elegant, handsome, less sharp and more handsome than when he was awake. She took a look and remembered that she was just afraid that he would wake up. She slowly breathed a sigh of relief and pressed her body against his. She felt something. Her hand was also held by him, and her whole body was held. She moved little by little and finally moved out. She looked at Fu Zheng, wondering if she wanted to do anything. She picked up the clothes on the side and put them on little by little. The light was dim, but she still got dressed, which took her quite some time. Then, she left little by little. Returning to her room, she breathed a sigh of relief and found her cell phone. She hadn't had it with her since Fu Zheng came back. It was 5 o'clock in the middle of the night, so she lay down on the bed and slept for a while. There was a little pain on his lip. Fu Zheng bit it a little too hard. Fu Zheng got up in the morning, thought for a while, turned around and didn't see Kinma on his bed. He wondered when she left. He tied at his body again. It was scratched by her again, a lot. Thinking about it, he turned and went to the bathroom and changed into a white shirt. After changing, he wanted to hold her as he did in the morning. He put on his pants, went downstairs and saw Kinma at a glance. Kin's mother had her back to the breakfast table. He walked over and stood behind her, looking down at her. She was also dressed like an old lady. Kinji felt something. Fu Zheng walked over and hugged her, and when he knew she had washed up, he kissed her on the lips. After a long kiss, it was very sweet and soft, and he hugged her. Kinji didn't want to kiss him, so he kissed her and smiled gently. Are you not used to it yet? Kinji let him do what he wanted. Fu Zheng kissed her carefully for a while. Look at her, sizing her up, and say he's going to give her something. When Kinji heard what he wanted to give her, she looked at him and said she didn't need it. Fu Zheng just told her to give her something nice to wear so she shouldn't wear the same thing all day. Kinji wanted to say no, she didn't need it, she would just wear this because of her age. Fu Zheng didn't say anything else, and Kinji didn't ask since she didn't know. Why are you coming down again? Kinji didn't answer him. Fu Zheng kissed her again and rubbed her face and lips with his hands. Fu Zheng said that he would come over next time if he asked her to send it. Kinji didn't want to go. Second Master Fu, aren't you afraid that someone will see you? It's not normal for her to be like this with him. What are you afraid of? Fu Zheng looked up at her. Kinji, I know the relationship between you and me. And there will be other things in the future. Fu Zheng stared at her, and only someone would say that he had changed his taste, nothing else. And they were talking about her. Kinji knew that she didn't want to be with him. Fu Zheng also said that no one would think much of it if they saw it, except for Kin's mother, and he smiled. Kinji also understood it at once. She looked at Fu Zheng and lowered her head. Fu Zheng told her to remember to come. Kinji knew. Fu Zheng just wanted to see her, to look at her. Kinji didn't say anything. Fu Zheng looked at her and breakfast was ready. Fu Zheng went out for exercise again and came down. They sat down and had breakfast together. He smiled and kissed her again before leaving. After he left, Kinji wondered if he would look for her at noon. It was still before noon, and she was resting alone. At noon, she didn't receive any news or phone calls from him. Maybe something happened. She breathed a sigh of relief. She had been feeling anxious, so she did her own thing, watched some TV, and learned some things online. During this study, she came across news about the campus. She was also worried about her son and wanted to ask his friends, but was embarrassed to do so. She looked at photos of her son, especially those when he was a child, and felt that he was still alive and well. When the housekeeper knocked on the door, she went out to open the door and saw the housekeeper. The housekeeper said that someone had sent something. Kinji asked what it was. She thought of what Fu Zheng said about sending something to him. The housekeeper smiled and said, "Look, Aunt Kin, this is what the young master gave you." Young master. Kinji tried to keep his expression unchanged, but his heart tightened. What did he say? What did Fu Zheng give him? The housekeeper smiled and said, the young master said it was for Aunt Qin. Aunt Qin, please come out and take it. People are waiting. Nothing else could be seen on his face. Kinji asked the housekeeper why the young master sent something. She urged again and she saw the person coming. Fu Zheng's assistant came in with someone and sent a lot of new clothes to her room. They were hung up one by one. Her room wasn't small, it was big, and her closet was big too, but she didn't have many clothes and no one else had anything. The young master said that Aunt Qin should dress up properly. The assistant said this and the housekeeper heard about it and followed suit. Kinji looked at the clothes hung up, one by one, by a special person. They were all clothes that she could not possibly buy and could not afford, so she did not look at them much. The housekeeper thought that the young master might feel sorry for Qin Ma and think that Qin Ma's clothes were not nice enough. Thinking of this, he didn't look at her anymore. The assistant looked over and nodded when the person who had hung the clothes looked at Qin Ma and thought that the young master was giving it to someone. They knew what it was at a glance and they didn't think much about it, because they knew the second young master Fu. The second young master of the Fu family is so nice to a servant and an old woman at that. Thanks. Kinji said something and everyone said no, it was Master Fu who ordered it, and they left. She hasn't said anything yet. The butler received a call, he picked it up and listened, it turned out that he also had it, he smiled even more happily, holding the phone. Thank you, young master. Thank you, second master. When Kinji heard this and looked at the housekeeper, she felt relieved. No matter what Fu Zheng thought, this was the best way. The housekeeper put down his phone and looked over. Second young master also bought it for me. Someone delivered it. I'm going to pick it up. It's for massage, Aunt Qin. Kinji also smiled. The housekeeper said he was leaving and asked her to put on more clothes before leaving. Chapter 24. She can't help. Kinji was alone looking at the clothes that Fu Zheng had sent. They were brands she didn't recognize, but they were all well hung. Her room was not small, and her wardrobe was also large and of good quality. Some of the clothes were not suitable for her age, Fu Zheng. She looked at them, her fingers running over them one by one again. She wanted to put them away, but when she thought that Fu Zheng still hadn't put them away, she looked at a few more pieces. Just looking at her makes me unable to wear it out. She didn't change it, and her cell phone rang. She didn't pick it up immediately. After a while, it rang again. She picked it up and took a look. Without looking at anything else, she swiped open the WeChat message sent by Fu Zheng. Got it, wear it well. Kinji wanted to say, she started typing, she didn't want it, I don't need it. Put it away and wear it for me to see. What do you wear all day? Fu Zheng replied to her. Kinji, some of them don't suit me. I don't know how expensive they are. Fu Zheng asked her to get dressed, as he would come back in the evening to see her or take some pictures for her. How could Kinji possibly dress up and take pictures for him? She didn't want to reply to him. He was the kind of person who wouldn't take it back. Fu Zheng, lunch is here, put on another piece of clothing. Kinji didn't want to go. Fu Zheng asked her to come, saying that he had forgotten what he said. Kinji could only go out to cook. She made a few dishes casually, looked at the time, and saw that there was still time, so she cooked again and ate by herself first. She ate fast and just ate a little. Then someone came outside and called Qin's mother. Kinji asked him to wait a moment and went back to the room. She looked at the clothes hanging inside and wanted to change into something simpler and less revealing. She found a black dress that was a little darker in color, not revealing, with a V-neck and reaching to her knees. She wanted a pair of pants, so she searched for them and put them on, then she looked in the mirror. The image of herself was still a little different, because she hadn't put on any makeup or done her hair, but it was a little better than before, and she looked very white. She went out, carrying a lunch box, and met Fu Zheng's assistant. Auntie Qin. The assistant called out and looked at Auntie Qin. Auntie Qin looked a little different. Kinji felt it and also called out. She didn't know if the assistant knew about it. She followed him downstairs and met the housekeeper. The housekeeper asked her and she smiled. Kinji said something, went to the underground parking lot downstairs and got in the car. It was a black Cullinan. The assistant opened the door for her and asked her to get in, but she refused. The assistant still waited. She felt stiff and uncomfortable sitting in the car. The assistant and the driver were both in front. The car started and quickly drove out of the underground parking lot and headed forward. She didn't know where Fu Zheng was. She was holding a cell phone and carrying a lunchbox. Auntie Qin is not far away. She will be here in a while. The assistant in front also looked back and said to Auntie Qin. He looked at Qin Ma again. Qinji thought about what happened last time in the car. The driver didn't look back. She didn't think too much about it. She looked outside. The assistant also told her where outside was. Qinji heard it, and soon the car arrived at a building, one of the largest buildings in the city, and drove into the underground parking lot. The assistant said, "Here it is." Qinji felt relieved. She waited for the car to park in the designated parking space, the door opened, and the assistant stood outside. She didn't need it, but went down to thank the assistant anyway. The assistant took her to the elevator on the side. Just as Fu Zheng said, no one would think much of it. There was no one in the elevator. The assistant swiped the card, and there was no one all the way. Was it different from an ordinary elevator? After reaching the top floor, the elevator door opened and she walked out carrying the lunchbox. The assistant took her inside again and someone looked over. Qinji didn't say anything and looked ahead. The assistant also walked forward to the office door, knocked on the door and opened it. Qinji went in. She saw Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng was wearing gold-rimmed glasses and looking at something. When he looked over and saw her, he looked her up and down carefully. Qinji wanted to speak, and the door behind her closed. "Are you here?" Fu Zheng looked at her and smiled, a gentleman like a scum. Qinji walked over. The office was very big and very different, just like the one on TV. She didn't look at it for long, just looked at him and the people beside him. Fu Zheng pressed his brows and asked, "Why don't you come over?" Qinji took a few more steps and was about to pick up the lunch box in her hand. She looked at the table on the side, and Fu Zheng reached out and pulled her. Qinji fell towards him, with a table in between, and she leaned against the table. Fu Zheng saw her face and the feminine scent on her body hit him. He smelled it, he wanted to kiss Yi and looked at her. Qinji noticed it, she called Fu Zheng, and saw where he was looking. He was a hooligan. That's what she thought he was like when she didn't know him before. Now it is like this. She said the food box was going to fall over, so she moved a little, moved to the side, not wanting to lean on it anymore. She also found it very obvious, as if she was doing something. Fu Zheng still stretched out his hand and Qinji called. She said, "Fu Zheng," in a coquettish and charming voice, and then she immediately shut her mouth. Fu Zheng liked her to call him like that, so he teased her like that and let her call him like that. Qinji called out a few times. Fu Zheng turned around and pulled her over, physically moving his hand, looking at her. Qinji faced his face through the gold-rimmed glasses. "Why are you wearing this?" He picked at her skirt, saying that she clearly didn't need to wear pants and it didn't look good, so he told her not to wear it like this next time. But it's better than before. Qinji didn't want to agree, so Fu Zheng kissed her again. She wanted to do something, but nothing. He just kissed her hard, and after the kiss, she felt like she had done everything she wanted. He even kissed her. Qinji wanted to say that was enough. The food was getting cold. Fu Zheng didn't want to eat. Fu Zheng asked her to come here just for this, for, after he was satisfied, he pulled her to the table at the side and asked her to put down the food box. Qinji was in a mess, it was always like this when she was with him. After she calmed down, Fu Zheng opened the lunch box, put food on it, and asked her to eat with him. Qinji had eaten it herself, she said. "Come over after eating." Fu Zheng looked at her. Qinji asked him to eat and she went back. Fu Zheng asked her to accompany him, so Qinji had no choice but to sit down and accompany him. The food was to her liking and she ate a lot. Then someone knocked on the door. Qinji wanted to stand up, but she felt nervous. Who was coming? Fu Zheng looked out. Someone came in from outside the door. It was the assistant, second master. "Miss Lu is here and wants to see you." Before Fu Zheng said anything, Qinji was thinking about Miss Lu. When Miss Lu came, she stood up. Fu Zheng asked someone to go down. The sound of high heels was heard outside, and when she reached the door, a delicate voice was heard, "Second brother Fu." She pushed open the door and walked in. When she saw second brother Fu, she smiled, and then saw another person. Who was it? Chapter 25. The Lu family's eldest lady. Who is this woman? She looked her up and down at her clothes. She looks okay, but a little old and her clothes are rustic. She still has a sense of crisis, so she wants to see more. Qinji felt the eyes falling on her, which made her feel even more uncomfortable, yet she acted very comfortable. Fu Zheng looked at Lu Qingqing and asked her directly, "Why are you here?" "Second brother Fu is here to see you and brings food." Lu Qingqing smiled, holding a lunch box in her hand. Her smile was beautiful and the lunch box looked very delicate. She held the lunch box and saw the lunch box that second brother Fu had eaten from, and there were chopsticks on the other side. She looked at the woman again. Qingji wanted to leave. She wanted to see if Fu Zheng was there in front of Miss Lu. Fu Zheng discovered something, nodded, and said to Lu Qingqing, "He had already eaten it, and you saw it too." "Who is she?" Lu Qingqing asked softly at this time, walking to brother Fu Yi and brother Fu Er, and looking at Qin Ma. "She is from the family." Fu Zheng revealed Qinji's identity. "Oh." Lu Qingqing knew about it, and she said that she had heard people talk about her. "Is that Qin Ma?" She greeted her and her smile had the flavor of a lady, as well as the innocence of a young lady. "So it's you, Miss Lu." Qinji also called out. Lu Qingqing didn't have any other thoughts about this. She just started to get nervous seeing that the person in front of her was not as good as her. She pulled brother Fu and wanted to say that the food had been served and asked him if he wanted to try it. Fu Zheng nodded and asked her to put it down. He had something else to do, so he asked her to go back and he would contact her when he was free. Brother Fu. Really? Lu Qingqing was also worried that brother Fu would ignore her. She felt relieved when she heard her cooking and said that what she cooked was what brother Fu liked to eat. Fu Zheng listened with a gentle expression. Qinji wanted to leave again. "You go back first." Fu Zheng spoke again to Lu Qingqing. Lu Qingqing was also obedient. She said she would call brother Fu again and wait for him to be free so they could go out and play together. Fu Zheng nodded and looked at her. Lu Qingqing left and asked before leaving, "Aren't you leaving, Mother Qin?" Qinji said she was leaving soon, she was here. Fu Zheng said he would leave soon, so Lu Qingqing left first. She left like a lady, wearing high heels and carrying a bag. Qinji also said she was gone. "Why are you leaving?" Fu Zheng pulled her hand, pulled her over, pulled her in front of him, and pulled her to sit down on him. Qinji called him. "Master, why is he doing this?" Outside the door, she looked over. If someone came, someone saw it. And Miss Lu just now. "What are you looking at?" Fu Zheng asked her, and followed her gaze and saw the door. The door was closed, so no one would come in and he would not be able to see it. He buried his head in her. "Fu Zheng, master." Qinji called him again and looked at his buried head. It smelled very fragrant, with his unique scent. She wanted to shake him. Fu Zheng sucked on her again and said that the person had left. Qinji didn't hear clearly what he said and looked down at him. He raised his head, looked at her face and kissed her all at once, and then he kept kissing her. "Qinji, young master, Fu Zheng." Fu Zheng kissed her like this, again and again, for a long time. After he was done, she felt confused again with Qinji and wanted to take care of her. Fu Zheng ignored her and was interrupted. Qinji thought that it was the food sent by Miss Lu. Fu Zheng continued to kiss her. "Qinji." Fu Zheng let her go and looked at the food box that Lu Qingqing had brought. He knew what was in the box without opening it, so Qinji said she would help him open it. "What are you opening it for?" he said without asking her to help. Qinji never knew what Miss Lu did as it was not written in the book, so Fu Zheng ate some of the food she brought. She said she could just eat Miss Lu's. Fu Zheng called someone in. He was full. After the people collected all the food, Qinji told him that she would not disturb him anymore. Fu Zheng pulled Qinji aside again and kissed her, then whispered something to her. Qinji did not resist and she went back, still taking the same car. But before leaving, Fu Zheng asked her to go back and change her skirt, as he would come back to see her. Qinji looked outside, the scenery outside flashed by, the driver and the assistant looked ahead, and said a few more words, "We are almost there," and the car stopped. The car door opened. The assistant called out Qin Ma. Qinji nodded, looked at them, and thanked them for sending her back. The assistant and the others sent Qin Ma all the way back to the apartment before leaving. Qinji said it wasn't necessary, but they sent it anyway and are leaving now. She walked in and the housekeeper came up after a while, smiled when he saw her, and asked, "Young master, did you use it well?" "Well said." Qinji said a few words to the butler, whom he hadn't seen before. "I found out later." The housekeeper also asked about the second young master's situation, and Qin's mother told him what she saw. "I knew the young master was different. He was ready as soon as he came back." The housekeeper spoke again, and the lady was relieved. There was something else. The young master was amazing. Qinji listened with a smile. After the housekeeper left, she went into the kitchen alone and put down the food box. The food box was empty. After cleaning, wash your hands. She went back to her room, looked at herself in the mirror, and saw how disheveled she looked. She did not touch her new clothes. When Fu Zheng arrived and it was almost time, Jukin called him. He talked to Jukin and then went back. He got in the car, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom. It was the first time he sat in one since returning, and also the first time he had to give way. The black Phantom drove very smoothly. Before nightfall, Qinji cooked. After she was done, she changed into a skirt, which was still very tight and didn't reveal anything. She didn't wear any pants underneath. Fu Zheng said that if she wore it again, he would be unhappy and would not let her go. She didn't know why he wouldn't let her go. He was already like this, so she thought about it and decided to change it. She felt uncomfortable, her legs unconsciously wanted to be put together, and she looked around. She hadn't worn a skirt in a long time, and she hadn't been naked like this before. When she was young, she still liked it, loved to dress up, and liked to look at her own face. Her own face. Has Fu Zheng ever disliked her face? She put her legs together again and looked outside. She saw no one, heard no sound, and her cell phone didn't ring. She told herself not to be like this. She started doing other things. I don't know how much time had passed. It was getting dark and there was a noise outside. Qinji thought that Fu Zheng was not coming back. Maybe he went to look for Miss Lu. She wanted to change her skirt, and then she felt a little amused that she was too proactive. There was no need to change the skirt, she could just try wearing it herself. When she heard the sound, she looked at the door, stood up, and saw the person who appeared at the door. It was Fu Zheng. That handsome face appeared in front of her. He came in holding clothes and there was someone behind him. The assistant nodded and stepped back. Chapter 26. Injured. Fu Zheng walked in and saw Qinji. She was dressed well, not the skirt she wore before, but a new one. She was very obedient. He looked at her face a few more times and walked closer. Qinji called out, "Young master is back." Fu Zheng nodded, walked in front of her and looked at her face, pulled her over and kissed her. Her face was still very smooth. He dressed up again, lowered his eyes, glanced at her and wanted to take action. Qinji called out to the young master, "Have you had dinner yet? Have you cooked?" Fu Zheng asked her. He didn't cook. What did he cook? He asked her. Qinji didn't cook either. Fu Zheng asked her to cook with him. In the restaurant, Qinji had already arranged the dishes and Fu Zheng couldn't help her even though he wanted to. She gave the young master a bowl and chopsticks for him to use. Fu Zheng also wanted to help her, but Qinji didn't need it, so she arranged it herself and they used it together. Young master. Qinji didn't smell any alcohol, she thought the young master came back drunk. Fu Zheng didn't know what she was going to say. He ate the dinner she prepared and Qinji also ate a lot. After they finished it together, he pulled her to take a shower and asked her to accompany him. Qinji wanted to think about how to go together, but she didn't want to. She was not young anymore, and her body. She didn't want to take a shower together either. Fu Zheng said let's go together and pulled her up. When they got upstairs, he asked her to go in together. Qinji didn't want to. I forgot to say that this dress looks better than before. The dress is really pretty, as is the person. The color is also suitable, but it's still a little conservative. Fu Zheng whispered in her ear. Qinji looked at him, but didn't have time to say anything. Fu Zheng pulled her in and helped her. Qinji didn't want it, but he still wanted it, so he hugged her and kissed her. You can't see it from the outside, so you don't know. Coming out of the bathroom, Fu Zheng finished wiping his hair. His hair was still a little wet. It looked wild and unruly, yet elegant. Qinji's hair and body were wet. She wrapped herself in a bath towel and felt uncomfortable all over. There was also hair on her body that she had wiped. She said she was going downstairs. Fu Zheng pulled her and asked her what she was doing downstairs. When she got to the bed, he turned around and looked at her. Qinji looked at Fu Zheng above her head. Fu Zheng. She said word by word. Fu Zheng looked at her, kissed her again, hugged her whole body, and the two kissed each other again. Qinji moved to push him away, but he stopped her from moving. What are you moving again? You want to push me away again? He smiled. Mother Qin. Qinji didn't want to hear him scream. Fu Zheng grabbed her hands. Her hands were a little rough. After thinking about it, she understood. He originally wanted to kiss her, so he kissed her lips anyway. Kinji wanted to pull his hand out. Is it really the male lead? All male leads are like this. What are you still thinking about? Fu Zheng noticed that she was not concentrating, so he looked up and asked, then bit his mouth to stop her from thinking. She couldn't think. Getting up again, Kinji saw that it was getting late outside. She took her cell phone but couldn't find it. She came to her senses and realized that she was still in Fu Zheng's room. She felt someone behind her, her breath was touching, she knew it was him, she could see him as long as she turned around, but she didn't see him. She looked around quickly and her cell phone was still not there. She didn't know the time. Her cell phone was downstairs in her room. In the blink of an eye, a night had passed. Last night, she felt sore all over and had no strength. She got up and looked to the side. Her clothes had also gotten wet in the bathroom. Thinking of the same thing, her face became a little hot. She shook her head, trying to think of nothing. After she had shaken her head empty, she saw a bath towel on the side. She immediately picked it up and quickly put it on bit by bit. She looked at the man on the bed. He was not covered and looked handsome. She turned her head away and retracted her gaze. Then she adjusted the bath towel and wrapped it. Then she walked out. She walked to the door and went downstairs without looking back. She went back to her room. When she got to the room, she felt safe again. She looked at her cell phone and it was past 7 in the morning. She slept with Fu Zheng for one night. She looked through her closet and found that all the clothes were given to her by him. She still found her original sportswear and put it on. The weather is going to get hot. After getting dressed and combing her hair, she looked away, went out to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator and started cooking. It was getting a little late. It's time. There were footsteps. She turned around and saw Fu Zheng coming down. He was wearing a grey shirt with no buttons buttoned. He was still buttoning it, bit by bit. The shorts she wore were not long, unlike the usual ones, they were sports shorts. She didn't look at them for long and turned back to continue what she was doing. Fu Zheng looked at her. She was still wearing the same old-fashioned sportswear. It was old, but there were no beads on it. He glanced at it and took another look. Kinji noticed that she didn't look back. Fu Zheng asked her why she got up so early. This woman always got up very early and he didn't even know about it. Why don't you wear the gift I gave you? Kinji just said to cook and not to make a mess. Fu Zheng looked at her, walked up to her, kissed her, and hugged her. Kinji moved and looked at him. He kissed her again. After a while, he left and no one knew where he went. Kinji prepared breakfast and put it in the dining room. After putting it away, she called Fu Zheng. Fu Zheng came down from upstairs, looked at her, walked up to her and kissed her, then sat down together to have breakfast. After breakfast, someone came to find Fu Zheng and he left. Kinji watched. After a while, she received a call from her son's school. Chapter 27, Evil Spirits. He said his son was injured and asked her to go to school. She was very anxious and worried when she heard that. How could her son be injured? The school only allowed her to go. She asked if the injury was serious. She recalled the last time she saw her son, he had bruises on his face. She asked him, and he said it was from physical education class. She had asked him if he had recovered and applied medicine. She wanted to see him, but he refused. He said he had recovered and applied medicine. There was a little conflict. The teacher said on the phone, "Can Zeddy's mother come over and take a look?" Okay. Kinji responded, and she went there immediately. She became even more anxious. She put down her phone and changed her clothes. She changed into a decent set and didn't care about anything else. She changed into her original clothes, picked up her phone, went out, put on her shoes and went. Soon she met the housekeeper, who brought people to deliver food. "Mother Kin, where are you going?" When the housekeeper saw Kinma's expression, he knew something had happened at home again. Kinji saw the housekeeper and talked to the housekeeper. She said that her son had something to do and she had to go to school. The housekeeper understood and asked her to go and asked if she needed a car to take her there. Kinji didn't have time to say anything, she got downstairs and was about to get in the car. "Auntie Kin." Behind her, the housekeeper came out and asked her to wait a moment. The car came out and he asked someone to tell someone. Just as he finished speaking, a car drove over. "Auntie Kin, please go and sit down," said the housekeeper. Kinji couldn't care less, so she thanked the housekeeper, got in the car, closed the door, and the driver asked something, and Kinji answered, and the car started moving forward. She was in a state of confusion and the driver didn't say anything. Fortunately, it didn't take long. After she checked her phone a few times and found nothing wrong, they arrived outside the school. She thanked the driver, opened the door and got out. "Does Auntkin need to wait for you?" the driver asked from the front. Kinji shook her head and said no, thank you. She ran into the school gate. The security guard at the gate glanced at her and asked, "What are you doing?" Kinji tried to calm herself down, but her son was in trouble, so she couldn't calm down and said calmly, "The teacher informed me that my son was injured." The security guard noticed something and asked who it was. Kinji said her son's name and took out her cell phone to call the security guard. The security guard let her in without asking any questions. Kinji went in. She knew where her son's classroom was. She took out her cell phone and got through. She asked the teacher, "Mother Kinzie, are you here?" the teacher asked her. She said that she arrived and asked where the classroom was and was told that it was in the office. After she found out where it was, she realized that it was next to her son's classroom, so she arrived at her son's teaching building. Her son's teaching building was the last few buildings to arrive. When she arrived, she went upstairs to the 3rd floor. She had never arrived so quickly before. After looking around, she saw the office and heard a voice when she walked over. It was his fault in the first place. He was the first to do it. "It's you. Calm down for a moment. Anyway, this man beat my son like this." A middle-aged woman, dressed in jewels and carrying a bag, looked very rich. She was pointing at her son Kinzie and talking, looking very ferocious. The teachers and people on the side were trying to persuade them, "We are all injured and we are all at fault." "What's wrong?" "I just said a few words, it's nothing. My son is injured like this, you have to be responsible." The middle-aged woman said again, pulling her son. There was blood and wounds on her son's face. But her son was the same, there was blood on his face and hands, and it was obvious that he was seriously injured. Kinji had never seen her son like this before, so she rushed in immediately. Her son had been obedient and sensible since he was a child, and nothing had ever happened to him. She had always been afraid that her son would fight with others, but later when she found out that he didn't, she was still worried. Now, for the first time, she looked at her son and rushed to his side. "Azawa. Mom, you're here." Kinzie heard the voice and saw his mother coming. "What's wrong with your face? Tell Mom, I believe you." Kinji just looked at her son and asked while holding his hand. Kinzie's expression was a little complicated. Kinji was concerned about whether her son was in pain. She wanted to help him feel the pain and also wanted to blow on it, but Kinzie shook his head. "Why does it hurt?" "It's my son who's in pain." "Your son hit someone." At this time, the middle-aged woman stared at her and spoke. Her son also looked over, as if he was looking at something, with something on his fat face. Kinji was about to say something and looked at them. "The parents are here, so just talk it out and discuss it nicely." The teacher and school staff immediately advised upon hearing this. "What are you discussing?" "My son is like this. I don't know if this person has no one to teach him. He beat him like this." The middle-aged woman screamed again, looking very ugly. Her son also, "Kinzie, you hit me," staring at her son Kinzie. Kinzie said, "I hit you." Kinji pulled her son and said, "Xiaozie, you can tell me why you are like this." Pulling his son to look at him. Kinzie didn't say, "Mom." Kinji had more questions to ask. "Mother Kinzie," the two children explained clearly. They refused to say anything when asked. Someone saw them fighting, but no one knows why. The teacher spoke again. Kinji wanted to know, but Kinzie didn't seem to want to say it. "What are you talking about? This kid is not a good kid. Look at him. He must be responsible if he hits someone." The middle-aged woman said again, asking people to pay money or something. "But we look like poor people. How can we go to this school? I don't know how they recruited people. They look like second-rate people. Do you have money to pay? If not, I won't do it." She looked down at him and said, "I will call the police and find a doctor. Then report it." Kinji said to her. She was not afraid of paying money, but for her son, she ignored the woman and said to her son. Kinzie's eyes flashed, "You know what you said, you are a coward," to the middle-aged woman's son. "I'm not wrong. I heard that your mother is a maid, and I don't know if she is a mistress. I haven't seen your father and your mother. The middle-aged woman's son was anxious for a moment and wanted to say more. Say it again. Kinsey clenched his fists. He didn't expect that he would say this. He just didn't want his mother to be sad or disappointed. He wanted to say something. He didn't expect to fight or have his mother come. Kinsey also knew why it happened. She felt a little sad. It was for her son. It turned out that her son did this for her. She was the one who made her son like this. Did something else happen that she didn't know about? She has thought a lot since she was a child, and her teachers know it. The middle-aged woman couldn't help but frown when she saw this and stared at Kinsey. Your mother looks like this. She wanted to say something else. It's not your turn to say what I am like. You should educate your child if he says that. Other things have nothing to do with him. You understand what kind of person I am. Your son knows how to say bad things about others, but he was not taught. Let alone insulting others. Kinsey was angry and a little upset. Chapter 28 Response. The middle-aged woman was still going to say, and her son was also saying, Kinsey, many people say why you don't fight, it's because you haven't seen your father, and your mother is dressed like that. I only heard you say it. Kinsey said this, his expression unchanged. Kinsey felt even more upset. Some people said that it was not just the one in front of him, and she didn't know what her son was thinking. Now that the matter is clear. The teacher spoke again, everyone is wrong. Fighting is wrong. Zheng, you shouldn't talk nonsense, and Kinsey, you shouldn't hit others. He pushed me first. Kinsey said again, looking at the opposite side. When Kinsey heard this, she looked over and saw the middle-aged woman's face changed. She didn't believe it. I don't believe it. How is it possible? You are lying. She wanted to say more and pulled her son to come. Her son, I didn't. Do you know whether you have it or not? I told you. Kinsey made a look. The child Zheng immediately said, I just pushed it, but you didn't. Did you hear that? Kinsey didn't want to think too much and told the teacher and the middle-aged woman. The teachers knew everything and said that both of them were wrong, but Zheng was the cause. No, just push it, said the middle-aged woman. Then call the police. Kinsey was not afraid, but Kinsey was worried about his mother. Call the police. Do you think I'm afraid? The middle-aged woman said again, arrogantly. Her son Zheng also looked at her. Kinsey was about to speak. Kinsey also watched. It's better not to call the police. The teachers persuaded them again, saying that they should go see a doctor first, as they were all at fault and the school would take care of it. The middle-aged woman disagreed, and her son didn't say anything. She wanted to make a fuss again, but the teachers kept persuading her. Her son admitted it, and they could testify. Middle-aged woman, how dare you? Do you know who I am? What if my dad knew? Zheng also said. The teachers stopped talking. Kinsey said to call the police. I'm not afraid of anything. Kinsey said directly, do you think no one saw it? You just don't admit it. Zheng, I'm not afraid. The teachers advised again, and that was it. The middle-aged woman still asked for money. It recorded everything. Kinsey picked up her mobile phone at this time. She had recorded everything and uploaded it. If the middle-aged man made trouble again, she would let everyone comment on the etiquette. The teachers didn't. I thought, Mother, Kinsey doesn't have to do this, I'd better delete it. The middle-aged woman also opened her mouth and wanted to rush forward to grab it. How dare you? Do you know the consequences of offending me? Zheng was a little afraid to look at Kinsey again. Kinsey couldn't believe that his mother would do this. His mother was still so powerful. She protected him since he was a child, but he made a big fuss. Kinsey just wanted to find a solution. She had lived for so many years, and she told the teacher that if it could be solved properly, then that would be it. Otherwise, everyone could see that it was useless to snatch the phone. The middle-aged woman stopped talking. HMPH, that's it, you. She pulled her son. Apologize. Kinsey said to the middle-aged woman, and the middle-aged woman wanted to say something again. Kinsey said your son should speak first. Both of them started fighting, otherwise. The middle-aged woman's expression changed again. She told her son to leave and said as she walked away, why would you bother with someone like that? The teachers looked at it, apologized, and then said that it was better not to send it out. Kinsey said it was okay and she would delete it. Kinsey said the same. The mother and son talked about it again, and the teachers asked them to take them to the hospital to have a look at the wound. Kinji took her son with her and they went downstairs. When they got downstairs, her son was carrying his school bag. The mother and son went out again. When they got outside, Kinji looked around and found a car. There were many taxis outside the school and she said nothing. Kinji felt that she got in the car and she looked at the wound on her son's face again. There was a little blue on the side of his face and a wound on his finger. She asked if it still hurt. How is it? She wanted to touch it again, but her son shook his head. The taxi driver looked back and saw, "What's wrong with you?" He looked around. Kinji didn't say much and neither did Kinzie. He still regretted letting his mother come. "Is it a fight?" The driver asked again. The car drove out. Kinji looked back again. He just said yeah. He didn't say anything else. He asked the driver to look ahead. The driver agreed. "Or is this your son? Or your brother? Fighting is not good." Kinji ignored him and only talked about his son. Kinzie looked outside. The driver still said a few words. "I have a daughter too, she's very well behaved. My son is like this." He didn't say much. When they arrived at the hospital, the taxi stopped. After paying with her mobile phone, Kinji got out of the car with her son and went to the hospital to register. While waiting, she kept looking at her son. "Kinzie, Mom. It's Mom who's sorry for you." Kinji started to speak. She had been hiding a lot of things she wanted to say in her heart. Kinzie looked at his mother. Holding her hand, she looked at her mother and said, "It's okay. It has nothing to do with me. It was Mom who made you do this. Mom didn't know these things. There must be a lot that Mom didn't know before." Kinji said, "You didn't tell Mom either, Mom. Mom is not like that." Kinzie said, "Not before. Now." Kinji knew that it was not the case before, but as for her now, she would not go. She looked at her son and asked him if such a thing happened again, and to tell his mother if there was anything in the future. Kinzie thought that he was already grown up. "Mom is fine, only today." He said someone else said. Kinji didn't know what to do. He had to find a new job. This world was a book. Kinzie shook his head. "Mom, no need, this kind of thing is just a small matter, I can handle it, I am old, the only thing that matters is studying hard, I will study hard." Son. Kinji knew that her son was right. She thought she was doing well in this school. She was thinking about something else. When she thought about what Miao had said before, could it be that this was also one of the possibilities? Fortunately, her son knew how to fight back. Her heart tightened. Miao mentioned earlier that someone was targeting the school. "You?" She was worried and scared. Kinzie asked, "Mom, what are you thinking about?" and his eyes flashed. Kinji breathed a sigh of relief. Kinzie didn't want his mother to worry about it anymore. He thought too much. After the doctor saw it and gave him some medicine, he found out that it was not serious. He just needed to apply a few rubs and take some anti-inflammatory medicine. The mother and son sat down after getting the medicine, and Kinji applied the medicine to her son one by one. Kinzie thought that it was useless if he did it himself. After applying the medicine, Kinji asked him if it hurt. Seeing that his son shook his head, she finished wiping it and said that he would fight back next time. Kinzie nodded, "Mom." After leaving the hospital and going outside, Kinji wanted to take her son to eat something. She was worried that her son didn't want to go back to school to attend classes. Kinzie said Mom doesn't need it. Kinji still bought a lot of food for her son. Looking at his injuries, she knew that he might want to save money and for the sake of face. So the mother and son went back to school together. When they arrived at the school gate, Kinji asked her son to call her for money immediately if he had any problems. Kinzie agreed and went in. Kinji looked at her son's back, thinking about many things. Chapter 29. Returning at midnight. She took her cell phone and called her son's teacher. "Hello, who are you?" The voice came from the phone. Kinji held her phone and looked at the school. She said to the phone, "I am Kinzie's mother." "Hello, I have something to say." "Oh, it's Kinzie's mother." "Hello, I'm Teacher Mu." Teacher Mu said, "I don't know what's the matter, Kinzie's mother. Is Kinzie feeling better?" She was very concerned. "Teacher Mu." Kinji said that she had returned to school, had been to the hospital, and had taken medicine, and there was nothing wrong. However, she said seriously, "Teacher Mu, I have never known what happened in the school. Not long ago, that student said that many people were talking nonsense." This, Kinzie's mother. Teacher Mu didn't seem to expect her to ask this. Kinji said directly, I heard it very clearly at the time. I asked Xiaoza and he said that someone said it. I didn't know before. I was wondering if this was not good and it was completely a rumor. Should the school stop it? Such words will affect people. Kinzi's mother. Teacher Mu paused and said, we know and are ready to deal with it, don't worry. School is a place for learning. I sent Kinzi to school for this. What if you don't stop this from happening again? If it weren't for this, nothing would have happened today. What's the point of learning if you keep talking nonsense? Kinji spoke again. Teacher Mu didn't seem to know what to say and just said yes. I hope Teacher Mu can handle it well. Kinzi's father is just gone and I'm just working, just like a normal job. Kinji said again, his voice lowered. So that's how it is. I know and I'll take care of it. Teacher Mu spoke again, don't worry, Kinzi's mother. Everyone in the school agreed, so I sent it to your school. Kinji added, I don't want to make a big fuss. Good. Teacher Mu always reassured her. Kinji put down her phone, thought for a moment, looked at the school again, and then she left. She waited for a car and got on it. She returned to her apartment. She was still worried about her son. His injury would take several days to heal, or even not heal in a few days. She did some other things and the apartment was very quiet. After finishing her work, she took a rest. There was a knock on the door. She listened and went out. When she reached the door, she saw it was the housekeeper and opened the door. Auntie Kin is back. The housekeeper looked at Auntie Kin with a smile. Are you back? Kinji nodded and looked at the housekeeper, thank you for sending a car to take me there. Otherwise, she would not have gone so soon and her son would not know what kind of grievances he would suffer from Shusheng's mother. Your son? The housekeeper asked, concerned. Kinji said it was okay. The housekeeper heard it and said, if you have something to say, just tell me. Kinji nodded. The housekeeper also asked about her family. To be honest, Kinji had forgotten a little about it, so she just said it was okay. The housekeeper stopped talking and laughed and left. Kinji closed the door and stood alone for a while. She went back to her room. It was noon and she cooked some food, just a few dishes. She called her son and the call was quickly answered. Mom. Have you had lunch? Kinji asked. I've eaten, Mom. Where's Mom? Yeah. Kinji asked him what he had eaten and Kinji told him what he had eaten, tough leg rice, braised potato ribs, fish and soup. Kinji felt relieved. Her son asked her what she wanted to eat. She only made a plate of fried rice, which was okay. She also said that she made a few dishes herself. Mom, I'm going to eat. Kinji nodded. She asked if he had applied medicine to the wound. He said he had and that he would take good care of himself and study hard. Kinji held the cell phone. In the afternoon, she cleaned again. Only in this way could she calm down. She would still think about the impact she had brought to her son. After thinking about it, she cleaned again. The whole apartment was cleaner. She did not go into Fu Zheng's room because she didn't want to go into his room. She slept and had a good rest. She seemed to dream about what happened to her son. When she woke up, she looked up and after a while, she looked at the time again. Why is it this time? It's a bit late, so she got up. Fu Zheng didn't say whether he would come back or not, and no one came back, so she didn't care. After she was done, she waited alone. She ate alone and didn't have much appetite. It was late, so she rested alone. She slept in the middle of the night and suddenly woke up. Fu Zheng still hadn't come back. She fell asleep again just thinking about this. She didn't know how long it had been, but there seemed to be some movement, but she didn't wake up and couldn't breathe. Woo woo. She cried out involuntarily. Falling asleep. A low, hoarse, yet clear voice sounded beside his ears and Kinji woke up suddenly, thinking of. What? She opened her eyes and was startled to see a figure. The wall lamp on one side was on, the light was not bright, it was a little dim, but she still saw a man. She calmed down and realized it was Fu Zheng. He stood and looked at her, are you asleep? Fu Zheng. Kinji also called out. Yeah. Fu Zheng said again, took a step forward, bent down and kissed her. Kinji smelled a scent of alcohol. He drank again, you drank. A little bit. Fu Zheng was telling the truth. He started kissing her again, a little bit more intensely. Kinji called Fu Zheng, but she couldn't call him that because she couldn't help herself. Fu Zheng didn't let her move and held her in his arms. Qinji then realized that it was her room and her bed, so he entered her room. When Fu Zheng came back, he knew that she might have fallen asleep. There was nothing he could do. He just went in and saw that she was asleep. It was dark everywhere. He went into her room. Next, Qinji wanted to say that she didn't want to do it here, but she didn't say it. Fu Zheng kissed her and hugged her, domineeringly and forcefully. And gentle and soothing. She had no way of saying anything, so they both took a bath. They took a shower in the bathroom of her room. After she finished, Qinji wanted to say something, so he hugged her and kissed her again. He always behaves like this when he is drunk. He also said it was only a little bit, but his eyes didn't seem like just a little bit, they were very clear. Qinji's body was wet again, and so was he. When they looked at each other, her hair was also wet. He was fine, and after finishing, he went out. She looked at Fu Zheng and thought that it was time to go and have a rest. Fu Zheng faced her, pulled her and kissed her again. Qinji was not in the mood to think about it. Master, you should go back to your room. Chapter 30. The heroine appears for the first time. Together. No. Qinji said no. He said, it's right here. When she woke up, she had slept for a long time again in his room. Fu Zheng was next to her and she couldn't do the same as the previous 2 times. He thought he would be in her room last night, but it was true. Her bed was no match for Fu Zheng's and it wouldn't be comfortable to sleep on. She looked at Fu Zheng. He looked like he was sleeping soundly, with his brows slightly furrowed. She moved her body and touched her phone to check the time. She had placed the phone next to him. She was about to get up, but as soon as she moved, he reached out a hand and pulled her over. Fu Zheng held her in his arms and kissed her again. Qinji looked at his elegant face, and wanted to scream but couldn't. Fu Zheng held her in his arms. After a while, she saw that he didn't wake up and was just holding her, so she moved again. After getting up, she used her cell phone to take her clothes, went to the bathroom and looked at the mirror. Her face was still red, so she took a deep breath and exhaled. Looking at herself in the mirror again, she seemed to be younger and more beautiful, but it was just an illusion. She quickly put on her clothes. Fu Zheng was still sleeping soundly on the bed outside. She took a look, didn't disturb him, took her phone, and walked out quietly. When she got outside, it was light. She looked at it, went downstairs, returned to her room, changed her clothes, and went to the bathroom. She was in this bathroom last night, and before, she was in his room, outside. But this time, after washing up, I didn't look at her again. I changed my clothes and took another photo. She was still the same, without any change. She also went to the kitchen. Breakfast is ready. Just as she was about to take it out, she saw a person standing there. Fu Zheng had just taken a shower and was standing there in a bathrobe, looking at her. She didn't know how long he had been looking at her. Are you awake? Qinji asked him, looking at what he was wearing, and asked him why he came down like this without changing. The person is missing. He was gone when I woke up. Fu Zheng walked up to her, kissed her, pulled her together, and kissed her for a long time. Qinji, Fu Zheng. The second young master Fu. Fu Zheng still kissed her. After the kiss, Qinji's face and lips turned red, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Fu Zheng touched her lips and they went to the restaurant and had breakfast together. After breakfast, he kissed her again, hugged her, kissed her hard, and looked at her. This is the mark, is gone. Qinji was alone, a mark. She put her hand on her lips and suddenly she thought of the appearance of the heroine and the ex-girlfriend, Fu Zheng's ex-girlfriend. Now the heroine should appear. Last night, she recalled the plot of the book. My mind was full of my son yesterday and it still is now. Last night, she thought of this. Fu Zheng came back very late, in the middle of the night, and he still smelled of alcohol. She took out her cell phone and looked through it. In the book, the heroine got into trouble and rushed to the side of the road. She was scratched by Fu Zheng's hand and was slightly injured. He took her to the hospital. This was the first time they met. But last night, she bit the chopsticks for a while, but she still didn't think about it. He might have seen the heroine, and according to what was written in the book, he should come back to be with her. She wasn't feeling very comfortable, but she didn't think about it any further, the heroine. She was still thinking about her son, and was reading the news about fights at school and other things about her son's school on her phone. She no longer thought about anything else. After Fu Zheng left the apartment in the car, he asked about the girl from last night. He was thinking about something. He came back late last night after drinking and bumped into someone. He didn't pay attention at the time and hit someone. The driver got off to check and found out it was a girl. He asked someone to send her to the hospital and also went there himself. Second young master. The driver said to the second young master that the girl was fine after being sent to the hospital with only scratches. The driver looked back, thinking about the girl, who looked very cute. But it shouldn't be. Zheng thought about it for a while and didn't ask any more questions. He was thinking about something and looking outside. There was a hint of detachment on his elegant face and he smiled. The driver and assistant also thought of something. Hospital. A round, sunny-looking girl was lying there, listening to what the doctor and the nurse said. She would know her condition after they left. She looked outside the door, hoping that the man from last night would come to see her. She had never seen anyone so beautiful. He is gentle, elegant and calm, tall and handsome. I have never seen anyone as handsome as him. He is so handsome, just like the stars on TV. He also has temperament. How can you call him that? He is very noble, like a young master. She was so scared when she felt that she was almost hit by a car. It's true, but when the driver got out to ask her, she didn't say anything. When she got up and saw him in the car, she was stunned. He sent her to the hospital and had someone take a good look at her. His voice was also very nice and the hands were even more beautiful, she saw, slender and strong with distinct joints. She worked every day, and after finishing work, her family called her and said that after her stepsister and stepmother came into the house, her father changed and treated her worse and worse. The same went for her stepsister and stepmother. She had nothing and could only rely on herself. She works and studies to make a living, and sometimes she has to work at night, so she comes out late. She is also lucky. Thinking of this, she smiled again, very sunny. It was so nice to meet him, but why didn't he come? What if you don't come? When she saw him, she had a feeling that they would meet again. How would they feel? What would he think? She didn't know and wanted to know. She just wanted to see him again, and she would be happy just by looking at him. She didn't know who he was. She also felt that he looked familiar, as if she had seen him somewhere before. But how could it be possible? She recalled the person she had met before and didn't think of it. Could it be fate? At this time, a person came in from outside the door. When she saw him, she sat up straight and quickly looked down at herself. Her skirt didn't look good. If she had known she would meet him, she would have worn something nicer. But it didn't matter. She was confident that she was still good looking. She got up and washed herself. It would have been better if there was a change, but unfortunately, when she combed her hair and looked out, he was not the person she wanted to see, not him. She was disappointed, very disappointed, extremely disappointed that he was the one who stayed behind. Miss? The man who came was the one who stayed last night. He walked in and saw her standing beside the bed and called her. He was the one next to that person. She nodded. Are you okay? The other party asked her again. Fine. Miss Xu, if you are still unwell, please come and see me. The young master called and said that he has been discharged from the hospital. Jing looked at him and asked, Young master. Young master is not coming. Why didn't he come? He is not coming. She looked again. The man looked at it, another one who fell in love with the young master. Jing stopped asking.